Hey there, Smite fans, and welcome into another edition of some Sunday Smite. Aggro joined by Mifflin to take you through our final SCC set of the week in lead up to what will be our closing two matches of the debut week of the SPL. Miff, it's been a lot of fun to watch this Smite this weekend, not just at the SPL level, but we've seen some really good matches here in the SCC as well. We saw Average Joes beat the Herculean Hoofs 2-1, and Sturdy Artisans find the 2-1 victory over the Winter Dogs, at least in North America. And we're talking about North America because our final match is with the North American squads. The Fishies sitting at 1-1 up against the Tiburones de Tijuana. And Mifflin,
nice.
I'm a little bit worried because, thank you very much, because Tiburones, of course, means shark. Sharks eat fish. We should be done pretty quick here, right? Not that easy?
Oh, man. I'm just thinking to myself how long you were lining up that joke. Imagine you in the shower, really smiling to yourself, saying, oh, Mifflin's going to laugh really hard at this one. And I did, Aggro. I laughed a lot. It took a lot to swallow it down. It should be quick, to answer your question.
Yep, I thought a lot about that one, for sure. You got it. Thanks for yes-anding me there, Miff. Really good work. I'm excited to see what these two teams are going to bring because the Sharks, of course, they've looked so good so far. Sitting in that 2-0 record, they've got star-studded talent across the board on this squad.
They really do, man. You got guys like Guy, Jay, Blugan, Cope is dope, Spreen, and young man Heed hudding it up in the solo lane. These guys have been playing at the SCC level for an incredibly long time, and I think they've already proven, although we were only a couple of weeks into the SCC, that they are a team to keep your head on a pivot for. You really need to watch out for these guys because they have such versatile god pools. They're playing whatever they want to. I mean, Spreen might be the only other guy besides Sino to lock in the E set so far.
Yeah, and he made it look pretty good for them. And remember, they beat the Hoofs with Kassir in the support role, subbing in that support role for Blugan. So now that they've got Blugan back, assuming they've got Blugan back here this week, you expect this team to be able to take even the next step in order to try and compete at the top end. I think that, we're obviously looking at the Sturdy Artisans at the top. That's the team to beat, no doubt in my mind. But after them, it might be the Tiburones, Mifflin. They've looked really good.
They really have, man. Haven't fallen quite yet either, but we can't sleep too much on the Fishies, Aggro. Look, I've always been a huge proponent of that challenger mentality, right? And when a fish steps up to a shark, they are absolutely the challenger. You got to keep your eyes on this squad as well.
We'll have to see if they can do it. This squad, of course, I'm going to be looking at Kirmi in the jungle up against Cope. Cope has been a really driving force for this squad, as he usually is, for the teams that he is on. Kirmi, Oceans, Chronic, Ranjaru, and Nehu mix up the five. I said those in completely the wrong order, so please don't think that I did that correctly, because I definitely did not. What have you seen from the Fishies so far? What do you think some of their strengths are?
I think their strength is they've got a really firm grasp on the meta. I think Kirmi in particular is a player that has been able to dictate the pace of the majority of his matches, which is a calculated decision based on the picks that he plays. He's playing gods like Erlang Shen and Kamazats who can get involved early. I really think that the Fishies kind of really do make up this identity of if we're able to win out the early game, that's where we're going to find our stride, that's where we're at our best. Kind of reminiscent of Andinster's team. The Winter Dogs are playing that similar style. But they do occasionally struggle in the same way that the Winter Dogs do towards that mid to late game teamfight phase.
Have to see if they can remedy that here up against the Tiburones. Should be fun to watch because this Fishies team, they're sitting pretty right now. I mean, you thought about the NASCC as a whole coming in. We knew the Tiburones would be good. We knew Sturdy Artisans would be good. We figured the Herculean Hoofs would be good. But they're sitting winless so far. That leaves opportunity for teams like the Fishies to rise up the ranks and guarantee themselves a spot at the SCC playoff events. So this is one that would be a big win for them if they can find it. We head into picks and bans for game number 1, the Tiburones in that first pick position. How different has the SCC meta been in comparison to what we've seen through the first 2 days in the SPL? Have you found the picks to be pretty similar so far?
The picks, not so much, but the bans certainly have been largely similar, and the longer the SPL's gone on, the more similar the SCC's kind of starting to look to it, right, Aggro? They're starting to pick up some of the meta that those SPL guys are putting forth, but the one thing that I'll say that the SCC has put a lot more priority on than the SPL has been that ADC role. I think every single one of these SCC teams is vying for that Apollo pick.
Yeah, I think that's a good point for sure. Only sitting at that 35% ban rate, but he often at times ends up in the top 2 in the draft because he gets through a little bit more often. Athena, I'm glad to see the Tiburones on the same page as me. At least at this SCC level has looked near unbeatable in my mind. So they decided to ban it away, even that first pick position, and no Tiamat here from the Fishies. So now you're looking at things like that Apollo and the Tsukiyomi, of course, as the first pick options, and it will be the Suki here for the Tiburones.
Yeah, I like Tsukiyomi as a top pick almost always, just blanket statement, because he has that flex pick potential. We've seen him occasionally in mid, more so often in the jungle. He's able to dictate that pace as well as be that late game stomp god that has phenomenal kill secure abilities inside of Piercing Moonlight. He can engage the fights from a range with his plethora of slows, really. So I think that Tsukiyomi is a pick that you definitely want, especially in that first slot. And now Camazotz on the other end kind of makes sense to me. Seems like Kirmi trying to run the early game, but can he outpace a Tsukiyomi? It's going to be hard to tell.
I mean, I noticed that both Cope and Kirmi had Camazotz highlights coming in during our little packages, so no surprise to me that they prioritized that Camazotz pretty early, but an awfully early Geb pick here. We've seen Geb a little bit in the SPL already. We've seen him at the SCC level. Last year was all about pressure. Maybe this year a little bit less pressure-oriented in duo, but does that create enough space for Geb to come in and be a part of the meta?
I think recently Geb got a buff as well to his shockwave, meaning that he doesn't have to get as close to people to deal that maximum damage, a lot less variance on it. Should alleviate some of those woes of early game Geb not being able to clear out the wave. But with duo lane as it is right now, we have seen that pressure has been really easy to acquire in the lane itself. Junglers aren't rotating over for ganks nearly as often. Maybe we see purple buff invade attempts, but actually walking into the long lane itself is pretty few and far between. I think that Geb is a pick that can kind of lose out on that pressure in the 2v2 pretty easily, which is why I've been surprised to see him so often.
Yeah, me too. I think that maybe it's the prevalence of the crit build coming back and everyone going crit. Geb just default better against it because it was passive, so maybe that's factoring in. As I'm excited to see the Tiburones lock in this E-set. It's almost certainly for Spreen in the mid lane. I don't know if Cope's going to be pulling out the Sino E-set jungle, but 100% win rate on this pick so far. Sino a part of that, but Spreen as well. Do you think that she's that good, Mifflin, to be boasting that 100% win rate through 4 picks?
Blanket statement, no. I don't think she's that good of a pick. I think she has facets to her that make her incredibly strong. Certain aspects of her game could be even best in slot, like her ability to confirm objectives throughout the early game. If they're able to set up for a gold for you around the 10-minute mark, no other mage would I rather have on my team than something like E-set, that circle of protection. Impossible to out-confirm, impossible to fight into, makes it so easy to get those neutral objectives, but her damage output being so disjointed, the wing gust being a channel ability, her burst being pretty unconfirmable inside of that spirit ball as well, I think makes her a very easy target to dive onto, especially considering that E-set got locked into a Camazotz composition. You're going to be really relying on that Scarab's Blessing.
Definitely one of her worst matchups for sure, is that Camazotz. She has so much CC, but you can't CC during Bat Out of Hell. Makes it pretty hard for her to end up living. As Cupid comes through, we don't see as much Cupid as we used to. Certainly the dominant pick in the ADC role last year. Took a couple nerfs, but Guy J has looked very, very comfortable on this pick in the past. Not necessarily the top overall slot, but up against the Heim can easily force that ultimate. I like the composition that the Tiburones have here. They look like they're going to have a lot of team fighting prowess, plenty of CC and damage across their composition.
Yeah, I agree. This Sharks draft is incredibly strong. It's pretty clear that it's going to be Tsukiyomi and Osiris kind of spearheading the charge in all these 5-on-5 engagements, where E-set and Cupid are kind of getting to play around each other as self-peel, where Khepri can choose, all right, do I need to maybe deal this Camazotz in the back, help out my carries, use my Scarab's Blessing there, or can I just drop it on Tsukiyomi and trust him to obliterate the black line? It's a pretty interesting composition, to be sure, but I think that the Fishies may have come out with something a little bit better, just individual picks. This Camazotz into the E-set already has an incredible matchup. Persephone with a lockdown potential from a range, especially in these narrower jungle fights with the vines coming up as well. I mean, that you can just slam vines with your ult, and now Deathgraph's going to hit just about everyone in the jungle. I like their draft a lot.
Yeah, I think the Fishies have come away with a very good draft as well. I'm just a little bit worried about their early pressure in comparison to that of the Tiburones. I mean, anytime E-set's on the map, you're thinking of her getting lane priority and being able to push really effectively. Persephone takes a little bit of time for that wave clear to really come online. You got to get a lot of points in the 1, or some players like to max the 2, and then you're always kind of vulnerable clearing the wave. You've got Geb there as well. And with the track record of the Tiburones coming in undefeated, I feel like it might be a bit of an uphill climb for the Fishies. Maybe they're salmon, though. You know, they're going upstream. Maybe that's the type of fish they are. Let's find out in game number 1. Let's throw it down to the casters.
Let's see if the Fishies can find their way upstream and find a win here against the Tiburones. My name is Dolson. Gormiser's with me. Doug working the camera for this first set in an action-packed Sunday of Smite action. Gormiser, I want to start right where the desk left off there. This E-set in the mid lane. Seen limited play. Sino, I think, picked her in the jungle a little bit, made it look pretty good, and now we're going to get to see what Spreen can make it work in the mid lane.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. Again, in mid, it makes a little more, I want to say a little more sense just because mage, but at the same time, I feel like the constant movement that Sino had, and I don't think anybody else is going to make it work in the jungle, at least not easily, as Sino was able to. I think that constant movement kind of made it a little easier. You're not a sitting duck in this case, right, where you don't have necessarily the survivability that you would have to worry about here in mid. Although, again, with a good Spirit Ball, a good Silence, it gives you a shield as well there on your 3, so a lot of capabilities to keep yourself alive if you're on top of things. But up against a Camazotz Persephone, like there's a lot of lockdown on the other team. Eventually, Oceans is going to be over there as well, some good knockups, that Cataclysm that can come through. It's going to be difficult, I think, as the game goes on to just survive, and that's where Blugan comes in, that nice res that Khepri's going to be able to bring in. Spreen with Circle of Protection, Blugan with that ult as well, is going to make sure that there's a lot of health and healing, as well as just straight-up revival on the side of the Tiburones. And I'm excited to see what they can do with it.
Gore, what do you think about this duo lane here? I mean, both supports opting for something many would say is slightly defensive. Maybe you're conceding pressure, but in a lane where one side's a Geb and the other side's a Khepri, maybe it's kind of a dead wash, and Renjaru and Gaijay are really going to be the ones dictating what direction the pressure is headed in that lane.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch this one, because Gaijay is just good. I always enjoy watching Gaijay, and I think him and Blugan should run the show, especially with Geb. Like, this is the thing. Renjaru, I think, gets pressure because Heimdall. But I think you lose pressure when Geb is there. He's just not as great, even with the buffs that he's been given, at clearing as what Khepri and Cupid should be able to do here. And so even though they're going to maybe lose a couple of trades in terms of autos this early on, I don't think they should be losing like minion pressure, especially with the rotations that could come through. Like Cope and Spreen should easily be able to make sure that they get their feet back under them in the event that they do lose some of that ground. And so I think it's going to be kind of a stalemate, right? Like Khepri versus Geb is not necessarily the support matchup of the decade that's going to cause, you know, like your Ymir's versus Sobek, right? Like Ymir versus Sobek, they're fighting all the time, no matter what, wherever they are. Geb and Khepri are just chilling and letting everybody else do the fighting while they look for the healing and safety.
I mean, look at that. How obnoxious is that? Blugan hits you with the root, Gaijay there on the heart bomb, and suddenly Renjaru's missing half of his health bar. So probably Gore will be pretty quiet over here on the left side of the map, but absolutely the potential for some setup later on into this lane. Little knock up there from Oceans will send Blugan and Gaijay back. It's purple buff invade for the first time this game. It's, well, I suppose the first chance at it. We'll see if Fishies elect to try to contest with this one. Instead, they'll just head on to the lane. Scorpion concede over the purple buff. Not worth fighting over. Blugan gets this one. You have to imagine Gaijay will get the next one. These are small leads, Gore, that could make a difference as this game goes on.
Yeah, and I like the way they're playing it, because Cupid at this point of the game should just be better than what we see out of Heimdall. It's going to take a little bit before Heimdall is going to be able to clear as easily and as well, so Gaijay has a distinct advantage there. And Khepri's clear I love more than Geb's clear. Just at the end of the day, it's a little bit better. I think Geb has a lot that he brings to the table, but his laning phase is not necessarily the thing that I'm looking at. Plus the prots that you can get from Khepri too, alongside the clear that you're going to gain from it. Like there's just so much I think that synergizes a little better over there on the left.
This could be first blood. Piercing Moonlight connects, and Grasp of Death canceled out. Cope sees the opening, and he takes it. First blood over the Tiburones. Tsukiyomi makes his way through. He makes the Fishies pay.
Cope just kind of decided he wanted to kill them. Like, it didn't feel, there wasn't a lot of build up to it. He was just like, you're dead now. And then he did the thing. And so it's good. Again, aggression gets in there, peels off that red buff like it's nothing as well, gets a kill on a Nehu, burns that passive down, so it makes it a little easier to get in there and deal with this Persephone. Ult is up over there for Nehu as well, so setup should theoretically, again, be pretty easy. but you have to have a good wall up against it or really good targeting to make sure that you lock down someone like Spreen, like Cope, like Heed when he starts rotating in. A lot of those mobile units that are going to either try to get away, stay far away like Spreen, or try to get in your face like Heed and Cope here. So far, we've not really seen a lot of, I want to call it proactive play from the Fishies. I mean, look at this. It's been a very quiet game. They're, 1,500 gold down, maybe 1,200, a little less than that. But, like, they aren't getting a whole lot done. They're losing their first blood. They're losing their jungle. The pressure is going up on the side of the Tiburones, and it's in the form of pretty much everything that exists in the map. The waves from top to bottom, and their experience isn't necessarily far ahead, but that one level lead in the duo lane for both support and carry is so far maybe the biggest talking point and the biggest thing they're going to be able to bring home. I think GuyJ, because of that, is going to maybe be able to push that to 2-level lead, maybe a 3-level lead at some point, as now you can see everybody ticking up to level 7. They're just ahead of the Fishies in terms of experience. But they're going to be able to take this and turn it into a Gorp kill, a Forp kill, get themselves even more experience, more buffs, and just start winning harder.
Whoa, big damage. Oh, and then Blugan pulls Oceans right back into that E-set ultimate, but Spreen cannot detonate it to the tune of 1 execute onto Oceans, but they're going to have to send this Geb either back to base or back to lane. No more participating in this fight. It's a pretty quiet lead, but it's about a 1,000 gold lead, 500 of it or so, sitting between Cope and Kierme, so that is certainly worth looking at. The jungler about 500 gold ahead, and then maybe the rest of the 100 spread out evenly across the other players here in this game. Heed and Chronic, bit of a slap fight happening over in the solo lane, as you'd expect between an Osiris and a King Arthur. And Gore, I love... Let me make sure I phrase this properly. I love watching King Arthur in these games at the SPL and SCC level, because when it is played at its best, it is certainly a treat to watch. I hesitate because I don't want that to then translate to more people at my MMR starting to pick this god and you just smash your face on the keyboard and you see it more often. But seeing this meta where King Arthur tier, the run it down Bluestone style build, it's just so much fun. I mean, Final K decimated yesterday on this pick. There's something about a good King Arthur that can take a game over.
And, it's one of those things. Osiris has been hovered a little bit over here. We see Heat playing it here. We've seen Bologna a couple of times. I'd love to see those auto-attack gods have more of a role, but right now, like you said, it's the Bluestone dominance.
Whoa, and Chronic, well, he can't take the game over, not just yet. Cope is here as well. Piercing Moonlight will send him on back towards Kierme. Another small advantage over the Tiburones. Now it's going to be a blue buff invade, successfully picked up this time by Heed, and Cope has the lead that he does, 1 level and 1 kill over Kierme, his counterpart. Why not send some pressure over to the right-hand side? Chronic and Heed have effectively been at half HP this entire laning phase, and Gore, the Tiburones are able to capitalize.
I mean, now they're pushing that 1,600 mark, right? Again, it's just a little bit of gold each time, but anything is better than nothing, right, as they go forward. Actually, 1,800 is a little bit better, but that 3,000 experience that is on their side as well. Like, the levels are really starting to get a little bit out of control this early on, which is difficult to come back from. And honestly, they're in good spots. I love the way ESET plays. Like, she has been one of my favorite mages. I remember seeing and playing her when she released. Like, I remember the splash screen when she was launched in the game, and one of my favorite mages then. Spirit Ball might be my favorite mage ability to hit because it feels so good at max range.
It does. Look at this. Cope now is going to put pressure on the left-hand side of the map. This Tsukiyomi has been literally everywhere, and now it's the left side that's a little bit nervous. Ocean's walking away from this one. Nehu's going to rotate over from mid lane as well. This is maybe a chance for Persephone to flex some of those muscles on this fight. The Caltrops go down, the root's in, but so is the Grasp of Death. Cope receives the Scarab's blessing, but it's not been detonated. Good patience there from the Fishies, and now the swoops of death from Kierme. The CC immunity from Cope and the Piercing Moonlight will keep him in there, and Blugan from range knocks down Kierme once more. Gore, the Tiburones, you kind of get this feeling the Sharks are starting to run away with game number 1. We're only 9 minutes in.
They play so cleanly there. One of the things that I love about Khepri Rez is, yes, it reses you, but in moments like that where they're not going to let you die, which right now that's not necessarily a choice, Rinjaru is going to be able to get good circle protection pop just to make sure, 1, you stay alive, but 2, you get the kill with the burst. But Cope uses that movement speed to disengage from the fight and recognizes that Kyrmi's going to either have to put himself in a bad spot to chase him down and let his team, essentially go jungle for jungle, or he's going to have to try and find a way to retreat. But he does it after he's already used 2 of those dashes in the ult, which makes it way easier to chase down Camazotz afterward. You're on a timer at that point, so they get that kill. Again, good from Spreen to be able to find exactly what he wants, not only in the Spirit Balls here, but also the Circle of Protection. I just think, like you said, it's kind of running away with it. I mean, they're 5-0.
Oh,
they're
no.
up 3,000 gold at this point. You're about to get soloed over here by he. This
Oh,
is
no!
Cyrus.
It's
No,
done!
might actually lose his
Oh,
own life.
He stays alive somehow. I thought Chronic was for sure going to go down. Heed just shy of the solo kill, but you can say the same for Chronic there. Gore, you don't often see solo attempts or opportunities over in the solo lane, but there was one there for Heed. Now, with Chronic going back, though, finishing up that stone of guy, he's got the reinforced Greaves as well. I think that was maybe the window here for Heed to find a solo kill onto Chronic. This King Arthur, even though a little bit behind, is now just what you would think is too difficult to kill alone as an Osiris.
Yeah, and Osiris, again, we haven't seen a lot of these auto-attack-based warriors that are kind of at the forefront, right? Your Bellonas, your Osirises. They were really big at the start of Season 8, like for 2 weeks maybe, before
That's right.
Destal got hit with a couple of nerfs there. And that's because they utilize, ideally similar items, at least for some of their build, as what you would maybe see out of a Hunter. Sometimes, most of the time, it wouldn't be surprising to see them pick up things like an Ichabal later on, things like Chin Sides there for the Bellona. There's so many varieties in their builds, and they still want to be tanky with it, but they don't get the front light that I would like, the spotlight that I would like to see a little more often. I love seeing Osiris, I love seeing Bellona, but like you said, I don't know that Heed's going to find himself in a lot of positions to knock down Chronic anymore the rest of the game.
Unless Cope sends some more pressure over to the right-hand side. Fields of Love used just a moment ago by Gaijay. It's a 1-level lead, maybe 1.5 for this Cupid E-set. Spreen rotates over from mid lane as well. Nehu hasn't been able to have the same impact as the E-set just yet. Granted, nobody on the Fishies has. Luckily for the Fishies, Gore, all 5 deaths are evenly spread. Everyone's got one, so nobody can really point any fingers at one another too early on in this game. This Greater Scorpion taken down, but now the Gold Fury started, and Tiburones will secure the objective. Circle of Protection used yet again by Spreen to lock in the big gold boost here for the Tiburones early on in this game. Now with a 5,000 gold lead, Gore, shy of 12 minutes in.
Obligatory Circle of Protection, save for Spirit of the Nine Winds and, very few precious other mage ultimates. Best ultimate to have when you're looking for an objective like that. A nice, big, fat, team-wide heal, huge burst of damage. If they choose to fight you while you're in it, it gets charged up and does more. And if they don't, then even at base, it's still worthwhile for you, right? And of course, again, I love Iset just because she's so good, in my eyes, for, protecting specifically those areas, right? If you throw a Circle of Protection down, you get a 1.5 max range damage Spirit Ball if they're just far enough away. You have the capabilities with Dispel Magic to strip their protections as well as silence them, as well as get yourself a shield and slow them down. You get so much versatility in just 3 abilities that it makes it so easy to stop people from getting in and getting the job done. If you're Oceans here, there's not much you can do there except watch, and that's unfortunately going to be the way it feels for a lot of this game. I just think if Spreen has that ult available, and he should always, when they're going in for a Fire Giant and any of the Furies that spawn, then you're just going to have to sit back and relax because there's not a lot you can do to steal that one away.
That's right, and it's a standard mage build for Spreen from what we saw at the very beginning of Season 8, the Rod of Tahuti into the Spear of Desolation.
That's a lot of
so you get some cooldown, power, penetration. Early part of this build has basically got it all, so skirmishing and team fighting might be what the Tiburones want to continue to do. There's an ultimate from Chronic onto Cope, but Cope has only lost half of his health bar. And now the Tiburones might be able to turn this around. Nehu's going to get to this fight from the mid lane just a little bit quicker. The Tiburones back off, buy some time for their E-set to get into the fray as well. There's the root down, and Heed goes right back in, the Lord of the Afterlife, but the Fishies, I think, thinking twice about exactly what type of fight they want to take, and they'll leave. I think that's the right call, Gore. I don't think you can fight in to this Tiburones team just yet.
No, honestly, I mean, you're just so far behind. I'm trying to think of the avenue to get back into this, and realistically, you just need to farm up. It's very difficult right now, but sit in your lanes, get the minions, keep your tier 1s up. So far, they've done a really good job of making sure that this gold deficit is just in minions and jungle camps. It's not been something large like a tower going down and losing map pressure. As long as these tier 1s are standing, you can stay grouped up like this. It's not necessarily going to be a winning fight every time. You can clear the wave, get the experience, kind of grind it back out to stay alive, because right now, like, Kyrmi's 3 levels down in the jungle. Same thing there in the support role. Everybody else has a 1-level deficit, so you really have to start picking up any and every amount of experience that you can and contesting in the smart moments, right? Like, you know, Forp and Gorp, they're not a lot. They're not going to be worthwhile. Gold Fury?
Right.
Make sure that you're around for that. Even though Spreen, as I just kind of highlighted, has pretty distinct advantage over that, try to force Circle of Protection or force them to be uncomfortable using it. Same thing over here. Pyromancer, Fire Giant. Make sure that you are present enough that the Tiburones don't feel like they can run away with it, even if they have this advantage that they've built up so far. But otherwise, it is the slow look for ganks. Kyrmi, unfortunately, is so far out of this right now that he can't really come over here and, you know, help Chronic out and try to find a kill onto Heed. Can't really go over there and help Rinjaru find a kill onto GaiJ. Has to figure it all out on his own.
Oh, Fields of Love down for GaiJ. Rinjaru dashes in, has the crystals to escape this 1v1. But Kyrmi's here as well. Could be a 2v1, but then Cope just behind makes it a 2v2 if the fight should continue on out. Kamazot's here with Bat Out of Hell. Heart Bomb connects. Oh my goodness. That's half of his health bar with just a couple of autos there from GaiJ. This left side is not going any better for the Fishies as anywhere else on the map is, and the reinforcements are in as well. It's only the solo laners left out of this small skirmish. No purple buff to invade here, but backside Scorpion could get looked at. Nehu, oh my. That's a good damage check there from Cope as well. The Persephone has to dash away, and now Ocean's down to half. Grasp of Death connects onto Bluegan, but here's Piercing Moonlight from Cope. So the Tsukiyomi's gonna go back in, and he's gonna grab the kill onto Oceans. It's a long-range stun onto Nehu, but there's no follow-up damage. And the Tiburones score these one individual picks time and time and time again, continuing to pay off.
But that's why I'm telling you, I mean, did you see that Spirit Ball? That was almost 2 picks there. I love the way that ability feels when you connect it. Watching it, it hits a little harder too, right? It does 1.5 damage at max range. You get that stun, but just watching that chunk of health disappear from Nehu there felt really good, I'm certain, for Spreen. And now they get all of the pressure in the world. Like you said, it's just a single pick, but they lose so much pressure on the side of Fishies. I mean, this is kind of like watching a Jade Dragons game to an extent, right? Maybe a little lesser because we're not seeing it push to the full limit I think that the Tiburones could. There's, you know, still 6 towers standing up 17 minutes in, but this pressure that they applied early on, the way they've been farming, even though it's only been single kills, they've just dominated the map better than the Fishies. They're just, like, they're playing what is Conquest stronger than what we're getting out of Fishies. The farm has gotten up to a point where it's very difficult to deal with at this level. I mean, I'm seeing 1 item ahead at least for 2 rolls, maybe a little bit more depending on the gold in hand here for the mid laners and the carries, but there's just not a lot you can do to retaliate. You saw what Kyrmi did after that last game. Chronic can't handle 2 people on his own the way solo laner normally would. I mean, you essentially don't have a jungler right now because Kyrmi's so far behind, you have to figure it out.
Oh, Bluegan is going to be here as well. Scarab's Blessing perfectly timed because of course it is. And Nehu shaking his head at the way that this collapse has gone. Oceans takes a tumble. It's a double kill on over to Heat. 301 for the solo laner, 304 for the jungler. And now GaiJ's rotated in as well. The Tiburone shot calling has been on point. Fire Giant looked at. Rinjaru and Kyrmi, the last 2 alive, but Cope is doing his best to keep Kyrmi out of the fight, and he's doing a pretty good job of it. Piercing Moonlight, is he going to get the 1v1, the solo kill as well anyway? Rinjaru's going to get the knockback, maybe enough damage to get the kill onto Cope. Feeding his brains out, the 1 kill over to Fishies, but the Tiburones will get the FG in the meantime. And now, Gore, we're at about an 8,000 gold differential. A couple members of the Fishies back and respawning. It only seems like a matter of time here, 19 minutes in.
Yeah, keep that 8,000 in mind. It's about to become much larger than that. I cannot foresee them slowing down at anything less than 2 or 12K here as they continue grinding up. Tier 2 towers, both here and mid, should be one in right if they get a little bit of pressure. Same thing there for left. But it looks like they're going to back off here. Again, golden hand at this point is pretty high for everybody. Only 1,500 for 3 of the members, but that 2,300 sitting there for Heed is definitely something that you maybe want to go scoop up an item for and get yourself another power spike, especially now that he's got the Frostbound Hammer in there. He's going to be able to chase people down. Like, Osiris is the god of slows as far as I am concerned. He's really good at stopping you from running away in a lot of instances, and Heed's just going to be able to come back and team fight a little stronger here. There's so many things I was preparing to say. Specifically, I was going to challenge the Tiburones to have a perfect game, not lose anybody, but that just didn't happen.
Well, Cataclysm, so Fishies still trying to catch out the Tiburones
Spreen's
here.
low.
The Scarab's Blessing onto Gaijay. Spreen might have been the one who needed it at the end of the day. It's half HP on the E set. Obsidian Shard is the next item that Spreen has added into his build. A lot of percent pen early here for the E set, and then some flat with the Spear of Desolation as well. So this E set, Gore, I mean, with the way that this build has gone, one of those stuns connects, and you're taking serious chunk damage, seemingly, again, with the amount of percent pen that's there. You got to assume that anyone is very close to death here if Spreen is hitting the abilities.
Yeah, again, that max range, 1.5, so you saw that plus 70% scaling, so all of that power he picked up from the Draught of Tahuti and the Spear of Desolation going straight injected into the veins of a Spirit Ball, plus 1.5 at max, so it's going to be able to do a lot. But you also saw how quickly he can die, right? It's not done and done. You can still kill the mage this early.
Oh,
It doesn't seem like they have the opening on the side of the Fishies.
Oceans was not allowed to participate in this team fight, and the rest of the Tiburones stormed down the left-hand side of the map. There's still only one Tier 2 tower left, so the Titan could be looked at here after this fight if the Tiburones win it handily enough. Piercing Moonlight onto Chronic, and Cope picks up that kill, so now 5-1-5 for the Tiburones jungler. Mid lane Phoenix now the eye of the Tiburones, but the Fishies are not going to let it go quietly. Circle of Protection down, quickly charged up, big burst of healing, keeps the Tiburones in the fight, but it's half HP for the blue squad here. The Fishies with only 3 and then 4th back and respawning have to be careful about how aggressive they want to be. Can you get the kill on a Renjaru? That'd be massive. No, you can't. The Heimdall stays alive. It's Scarab's Blessing onto himself for Blugan, and the Tiburones are going to back away.
I mean, this is the downside of winning so hard at this point, right? They're respawning quicker than you can get the objectives because it's still only 21 minutes into the game. I mean, they are so far behind, 12 seconds there, or level 12 there for Ocean, so he's going to respawn much quicker than his level 18s and so forth counterpart. It's just interesting to see the fact that you've got this lead. Honestly, there's maybe one play in there that wins you the game, and it's one of those, again, hindsight 2020. If you have Blugan go in and kind of sack himself, but use his res to make sure his health goes off, drop the Circle of Protection there in the Titan room and force him to fight to charge it back up, everybody gets back to full health. It's a risky play, though, right? Like, it's one of those things that, yes, technically you can win, but is it actually worth what you're investing in and what you would risk for it? The answer is no. Go get the Phoenix in mid, get 2 waves of fire minions, forcing the Fishies to lose even more farm on the map while you strip it away. You get this next Fire Giant like it's nothing when it spawns in just a minute here, or just about, and everything's going to work out well for you. You're ahead, and they're playing like a team that knows how to win from ahead, right? It's going to be interesting to see how well they can play from behind. We've gotten to see it a couple of times the last few weeks, but this is the first time I think we've seen this big of a gap in the SCC this year. Like, it doesn't feel like anyone's lost this hard yet. And so for the Fishies, I think, like, I'm even past the point of trying to figure out, like, there's still technically avenues to win this game. You've showcased in a couple of these last fights that the damage still exists. You can kill Gaijay, you can kill Spreen, you can kill, Cope, because they're just squishy enough for you to burst them down. But I also think part of you needs to be thinking, how do we just avoid getting to this point ever again? Like, I do not want to be this far down in gold, this far down in experience, and this far down in kills in the next game either. I want to make sure that we never let the Tiburones have this kind of lead. And so while they're still looking for their avenues in, they're getting a tier 2 over there on left. That's a good chunk of change back into their pockets, help try to equalize some of these items. I think there's still a little bit of an experience gap. 5 levels there for support, still 2 levels there in jungle, 1 level there in mid. The other 2 have all hit level 20. So they're catching up in the right areas, but they've lost all of their towers. They've lost 2 of their Phoenixes. They're losing a Fire Giant for free. They have to win this essentially under a Phoenix or Titan defense. And that's a tall order. It's something that can be done. Good combo from Oceans, from Nehu, in terms of lockdown. Sets up some really good damage from Rinjaru, from Nehu as well, and from Chronic and Kirmi. But they have to make sure that they get it all synergized, and they can't risk anyone in the process. And on top of that, you have to do it through the Circle of Protection heal. You have to do it through Bluegin's Revive and GaiJ's giant Fields of Love. Like, there's so much that the Tiburones have in favor of their team fight. It's just going to make it, again, very difficult for the Fishies, but not necessarily impossible.
Gore, if we're going to continue to follow along with Spreen's build here, you know, we sometimes see star items picked up later on in the build, and it's Bumba's Hammer or something like that. I admittedly wasn't ready to see Sentinel's Embrace picked up this late on for Spreen here. I suppose you have enough power and penetration early on in your build that the extra physical and magical procs for the rest of your team is worthwhile.
Well, it's kind of half and half, right? It's not just for the team. For the team, absolutely. But he's getting physical prots and magical prots just from the base item, plus health, so survivability there on its own. But I mentioned this once. It's a very close range for this passive, that nearby allied gods. And so you're getting a decent amount of protections for yourself if you're ever alone.
Well, this could be the game-ending base defense if the Fishies are unsuccessful in defending their base. Phoenix in the mid lane down. Now Heed first through the door, and it's Nehu under the eye of the Osiris. Pull back in onto Chronic, and King Arthur is no more. Kirmi bat out of hell. That'll usher himself back into the fountain. And Cope is there as well. Has to use the Aegis because the Piercing Moonlight took the Tsukiyomi right into the Fishies fountain, but now Circle of Protection down on the Titan. The Detonate gets it done, and in 25 minutes, Tiburones will take quick work of the Fishies.
I didn't even realize that Cope was the one getting all those kills. He ends that like 6-1. I did not expect to see that one. I mean, everybody was getting kills throughout the early portion of that. And look, I mean, there's not a lot of ways to break that down. The Tiburones they played the map better early. They got more gold, more experience, and then eventually their lead was so vast that it didn't matter what they do. They could make mistakes and still get away with it.
Yep. It really felt like the Tsukiyomi out of the jungle there for the Tiburones, excuse me. Drove so much of that pressure in the early game, and then hats off to everyone on the Tiburones squad for converting that pressure into individual leads once the Tsukiyomi had left. Game 1 over the Tiburones. Quick break. We'll be back for game number 2.
Well, so far, the way of the world, the food chain has continued to work so far because the Tiburones devour the Fishies in game number 1. Mifflin, it was not close. That was pretty clinical from them.
I mean, it's so not close that it's a little bit difficult to analyze, right? I mean, was this another one where it's just one kill for the enemy team towards the end there? I mean, look, if I'm the Fishies in this situation, I'm completely scrapping the whole everything about game 1. P's and B's.
Yep.
I'm scrapping the strat we came into the game with, and I'm erasing it from my memory. Sometimes you get blown out, and there's really not much you can do about it. And the casters called it 7 minutes in. Felt like Tiburones had already run away with it.
Yeah, they did not relinquish it. Cope, the only kill for the Fishies, well, the only death for the Tiburones is a better way to word that. The only one who fell on their side to the hands of the Fishies. It was just too easy for them, it looked like. This Tiburones squad, I mean, they just look very well coordinated. They're really working well together as a unit, which, you know, in games like this, it's kind of hard to sometimes talk about it afterwards. It's, yeah, you know, one team got beat up on, but I think that you got to come away impressed with how the Tiburones worked together in terms of their objective shot calling after they got the lead.
And in particular, I really like, and you'll see him in every single one of these clips kind of hovering around the peripheral, Blugan's positioning on this Khepri. He's always hovering just in between his front line and his back line, able to turn on a dime wherever that Scarab's Blessing is needed. If he needs to move up and find an abduct, he can go either to the front or the back. I really liked how Blugan approached all of these team fights. And it's a little bit unorthodox as well. I mean, Khepri is kind of really good as just an ultimate bot, but usually use him for that initiation factor. But because of how the draft for the Sharks worked out, they could have Heed start up the fights. Because Cope was 5 levels up at one point, my man Tsukiyomi could just do it on his own. It was a pretty good game for the Sharks there.
Yeah, I think it's time for the Fishies to go back to the drawing board, to say the least, because the Sharks, they've got no adjustments necessary. If they're going to get the same tile of composition, they're going to play it. And I think that I agree with your assessment that the Khepri for Blugan was absolutely instrumental in keeping that death only on 1 on Cope in that game. I think the ISIS pick for Spreen was fantastic, keeps its 100% win rate, but I don't know, you can't take away everything if you're the Fishies, right? You got to make some sacrifices somewhere in the draft. We'll see what they decide to do. Picks and fans ready now for game number 2, and it is worth noting the Fishies were the second pick position last time around. This time, they've got that top pick.
They do. So what are they going to elect to do? Do they want the Tsukiyomi just to strip it away from Cope? I think that could be a good strategy, but I want to see some adjustments in the bans, and already the Fishies have done so. ESET in that very first slot. Seems like they've earned a little bit of respect for that pick.
I mean, look, I agree that Spreen was absolutely fantastic on that pick, and I don't fault the Fishies for this ban whatsoever. I mean, even though his player damage numbers ended up a little bit lower, through that early to mid game, he was a huge part of doing the damage and setting up with that pressure. The Geb ban confuses me a little bit more, I'd say. I mean, it was the Fishies who played it in that game. Oceans fell very, very far behind very quickly. Maybe they're looking to top pick the Khepri and keep that out of Blugan's hands, and then you're left with both defensive supports off the board. I don't know. I think that's the only way this really makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that is the only way that makes sense to me as well. If Khepri doesn't get locked in first overall here, then I don't understand the Geb ban. But even then, it still is going to leave a lot of pretty meta picks on the table. Looks like Set is going to be the hover here, but there's so many Guardians that are pretty viable right now. Even Ymir makes his way through. He's been getting a couple bans recently as well. Now the Sharks essentially have free reign of whatever they want. They could just go back to the Tsukiyomi. I don't understand why they wouldn't.
Yeah, I think Tsukiyomi Khepri here looks really good to me. I mean, I don't know why you would have to change that up. You can go with, you know, the Osiris later on in the draft. Cupid felt like just whatever the matchup was up against the Heimdall. Guy J has a very big god pool, so I'm not worried about him. I think I would probably just go Tsukiyomi Khepri and run it back and feel pretty good about it. Blugan is really good on a lot of different other picks. I mean, certainly the Fafnir comes to mind with his god pool as well, and they're going to wait on the Guardian selection for him. The Morrigan instead, and we've seen this when teams pick things like Set, they go, all right, you know, that's pretty scary, but now we can have it as well as long as we take the Morrigan.
or even just a double Tsukiyomi the second both are ticking over to level 5. Piercing Moonlight going to be pretty good at chasing down a set, or even a Danzaburo once he goes into that leaf form as well. Khepri still on the table, but it is going to be Danzaburo locked in by the Fishies here. I like this pick in general, just for the relative safety that he's afforded. CC immunity on the ultimate, the ability to kind of turn into a leaf or force fights on his own footing with that damage reduction on auto attacks and his third ability. He's very strong with Gilded Arrow as well, just kind of making sure he can stay afloat with farm in conjunction with his passive, but he is going to struggle a little bit insofar as push and lane. I'll be very interested to see what support they try and match up with them, but instead, the Sun Wukong locked in, likely going to solo lane, but does have a little bit of flex potential.
Yeah, I think the Danza is an interesting pick. We haven't seen him in the SPL level quite yet, and I think that he's still fairly strong. I think that he's probably a pretty good Morgan transformation. So you're gonna look good. Oh yeah, production in my ear. Thank you for the reminder. Zap did play Danza yesterday. It's only one appearance so far at that SPL level. Feels like that's a pretty good Morgan transform, if you ask me. I mean, you usually are looking for kits that do well all in. Danza Rocket does pretty well all in, so we'll see if that's a direction that Spreen decides to go. As Blugan gets to pick the Yemoja right before the next banning phase, Yemoja has been falling in and out of contention and really viability, it's felt like, here at the SCC level. But for me, Miff, I don't know how you feel. I think she's still pretty good.
Yeah, healing on auto attacks, healing on abilities, as well as shielding and the ability to displace enemies. Yeah, I like the Yemoja a lot, and I'm kind of mad at myself for kind of letting it go by the wayside. I had the horse blinders on looking at that Khepri, and it seems like Khepri isn't going to be the priority at all. The Sharks betting out a couple supports, but no nod towards the Bug. Instead, going to take away Ymir and Cerberus, going to keep in line with that aggressive identity that the Fishies are going for. I wouldn't be too surprised if we still see the Fishies pick up Khepri for themselves, just because of how well it would fit into their draft to help out with this dive composition.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could look really good as a couple of warriors take it off. Wukong, I think it is one of the premier solo laners right now. 5 picks in the NASCC, 4 wins, looking like a pretty good record that he's boasting right now. We'll see if he can keep that trend going. As Heimdall's a pick this time around for GuyJ. Heim has felt like one of the premier hunters. Both Apollo and Chernobog, the two that I would put above him, at least via pick rate, are still on the board, but he decides he wants to go with the Heim up against the Danza.
Yeah, I like Heimdall into Danzaburo just because it's easy to choose your own fights there. You can use your Bifrost to just escape out of just about any situation with that ultimate. You also have CC immunity on your own ultimate, so it's going to be even harder for that rocket to stun you out. Kabrakan locked in for the Fishies here. Fits that draft incredibly well. Again, the identity is clear. The Fishies are not hiding their cards at all. In fact, kind of playing them face up. We are looking to run at you, and we're looking to do it in the early game. Set, Danzaburo, Sun Wukong, Kabrakan, and now even Discordia passive going to play a large part in that early game. Keep your eyes on this set. He's going to get involved very early on.
Agreed. I think that the Fishies, you know what? They got blown out of the water early in game 1. Why not try and be a little bit more aggressive come game number 2? I think their strategy makes a ton of sense. I'm not... Kabrakan feels like he's either feast or famine. He's either really, really good or really, really bad in support. I feel like I never see a middling game for this god, but when you got so outmatched in game 1, I'm kind of down for that feast or famine style. Just try and roll the dice and see if you can get ahead, because if you do, then it can carry you through the whole game. So I really like the Fishies game plan here.
Yeah, and even just looking at Kabrakan as a pick in of itself, that ultimate should be able to get pretty decent value into the majority of the Sharks' draft. Tsukiyomi, Morgan, Heimdall, to a certain extent, you're at least able to stun him out of his Bifrost, and Achilles do not have any way to jump over that wall. They might be forced into picking up a Phantom, and once you do have that wall down, Discordia can have a very easy time lining up her abilities, as will Danzaburo. So it can certainly work out inside of that support role, but I think it's pretty likely that this Kabrakan ends up with a Discordia passive on her very early on in this game, which means that he can almost operate as a secondary jungler.
This could be the call here for Oceans, who again fell a little bit behind in game number 1. Going to try and stay a little bit more even with Blugan come game number 2. Excuse me. The Tiburones now, Mifflin. I mean, we've talked about the Fishies game plan. What does the Tiburones comp look to do here in game 2?
Seems like generally the same strategy. Have this Tsukiyomi try and act as a solo agent throughout the early, and if he's able to pull a lead, try and gas pedal and try and invade those buffs as well. Yemoja and Heimdall should have a pretty easy time establishing dominance in the lane as long as they're able to properly interrupt this Kabrakan Tremor.
Well, let's see if the Tiburones can find the 2-0 sweep and keep the momentum from a dominant game number 1. Let's throw it down to Dave and Gore for the game.
Tiburones riding high after game number 1, and the Fishies, Going with an interesting game plan heading into Game 2. Still Dolson, still Gore, still Doug for Game 2 between Tiburones and the Fishies. Gore, we have not seen Discordia yet in my short memory of what's happened here in the SCC. Definitely not at the SPL level. Why here? Why now?
Honestly, I think she's still pretty solid. She just kind of does her job, right? Like, she's very straightforward. Sure. It was one of those things, like, we've even had, like, discussions with some of the pros, like the mid laners lately. I was asking him questions specifically about Discordia, and there wasn't a whole lot of in-depth to go with her. I think she just does her job very well. If you can hit a good strife in the middle of a team fight, it's very solid. But I think the biggest thing, and this is something that I think is good from top to bottom for the Fishies, this is not a draft that should fall behind early, whereas last game, at least the duo lane was kind of inherently drafted that way, right? Like, it was one of those things that they looked like they weren't going to be able to hold on to pressure, and once they lost it, they didn't really have anyone that could fight back from behind that well. This time around, I think the Fishies have a draft that not only can fight this early on, but has a better chance, if they end up a level or two behind, to still continue and cause trouble for the Sharks on the other side and give them that trouble that they really didn't have to face pretty much throughout all of game number 1 here. And so I just want to see more of that, and I think Nehu is going to be a part of that, right? Especially in these groupings, these 2v2s early on in mid.
Wow, look at this early skirmishing. Bluegan could be on the menu for first blood. Oh, beautiful stun onto Oceans, but now GuyJ has been left out all on his own. Bluegan can't do much here. If he walks in, Ranjaru just turns around. Crystal breaks Crystal, but Ranjaru's on the other side of it, so you're kind of picking your poison here. Great knockback. Then the bounces there from Ranjaru won't connect onto GuyJ for the pullback in. Chaotic moments there, Gore. I think Tiburones, although on the back foot, played that about as well as they could.
You can see Bluegan trying to conserve some of that Omi that he has to deal with as opposed to his mana when he's playing the Emoja, and trying to make sure the healing is there when necessary. Doesn't actually have the heal yet, has the Riptide and the Bubble Bounce. And so GuyJ, they're just kind of floating here, using those autos to the best of your ability. You hit a teammate, it heals them up. You don't typically see this being the make or break, but it's the only thing keeping this duo lane kind of functioning right now for the Tiburones. They're just stuck under their tower line until maybe just one more level picked up there for Bluegan.
Yeah, that's a brutal lane. I mean, Kabrakan and Danzaburo is not a duo lane that we've seen yet up until this point. And out-pressuring a Yemoja just feels like a weird world we're living in here. Granted, the Heimdall needs a little bit of time to scale up and really start wailing away in the game. But the fact that you're able to out-pressure a Yemoja, I think, is a testament to how much damage and potency this Kabrakan and Danzaburo lane has.
It makes it really awkward for them. If GuyJ steps up or if Bluegan steps up, they're stunned out, right? And it's one of two options. Either you're stunned out because you've been hitting Oceans and he comes and slams his walls on you, or he just decides to click his 1, gets a movement speed buff, and runs you down the old-fashioned way. It's nice to see that they've been able to stay alive. I actually think there's been a lot more kill potential from Oceans and Ranjaru, and kind of surprised to see that they haven't been able to quite lock one down just yet. And so, again, I think that's a big testament to how well the Tiburones are just playing in general, and the fact that they recognize it's not always going to come out their way.
GuyJ does not have beats. He had to use them before. Will the Crystal get him out? Yes, it will this time. Playing with fire there. That's a mid lane back against Oceans, who had the stun, and Ranjaru nearly able to provide the last bit of damage to get a kill onto GuyJ. So GuyJ goes back to base. He's able to buy nonetheless, just a little bit delayed from what he was looking for. So we'll have to keep our eyes on the duo lane, see what happens there. Over in the mid lane, both junglers have made their way on into mid. Gore, serious potential here between Kirmi and Cope to make some early impacts this set. I think a good pivot for the Fishies jungler.
Yeah, the good news, I look down and everyone is still on par in terms of levels. I don't know when I first looked down last game and it felt like things were getting out of control, but I know early on there was a pretty big gold lead for the Tiburones. They had a lot of good invades and things like that. And the fact that that has been slowed down to a stop just shows, again, Game 1 to Game 2, Fishies have made some very, very solid improvements to themselves. And this draft just feels like it's going to function a little bit better. I'm a little worried as the game goes on. It feels like Set and Danza are really going to be the only two. Nehu, well, actually, you know what? I like this draft late game. Never mind, I've completely changed my own mind while exploring this one. I was worried about it for a second, but I think it is something that we'll be able to fight pretty hard and pretty well. But whoever's ahead and whoever's strongest, that gives some ammo over the screen. We just saw what Cope could do on the Tsukuyomi, so I'm not too worried about their late game potential. And Yamoja's good late game. Just in the middle of a team fight, in combat healing is going to be tough to deal with. So I think the Fishies are definitely going to have hurdles to still jump over, even if the game's going a lot smoother for them right now. It's just that right now, they're not having to deal with any of the same problems in Game 1. And that's honestly the best thing you could ask for any team. Do not suffer the same issues, 2 games in a row, unless it's something that's like very team-based, right? Like if your team fight just isn't quite clean as a team, that's not something that's going to bounce from 1 game to 2 games. You're going to need to practice on that one. But if your draft and your early game pressure is just terrible and then you do it again, that's something you could have fixed, and I like the fact that Fishies were proactive already. Like, just in picks and bans, they've made this a much more interesting first 5 minutes than the last 20 minutes of Game 1.
Well, what? Game 1 was getting out of reach 2 minutes from now in a similar time there in Game 1, so it's an improvement from the Fishies, to be sure. The jungle pressure is where Game 1 lived and died. Most of it was Cope living and most of the Fishies dying, and now we're going to see him find a small engage over onto Oceans. The stun is down, but so is the ultimate from the Kabrakan as well. Another return stun. Oh, it's a beautiful Rivers Rebuke. I've got a bigger wall, says Blugan. And Cope has the first blood of this game. Spreen in the back line, unable to get the kill onto Nehu, who will escape this time. But it's the Tiburones score, Miser, right as we're praising the Fishies for delaying this early game. Tiburones strike for first blood.
I still think the Fishies are in a better spot, but I will say that is the problem that they're going to have to face. Kabrakan can break down his walls in 1 hit, but with the way that ult was placed and the jukes that Cope was able to throw out as well as Blugan just made it so much cleaner for them as a fight. And once that Rivers Rebuke came up, your options as Oceans were to break down your walls and run towards the Tiburones, or die inside Rivers Rebuke. It was kind of just a pick your battle. Where do you want to go, and who do you think you want to give this kill away to?
Right.
Ultimately, I don't think there's a good way to get out of there, and that's the thing that you're going to have to face, I think, throughout this entire game. And really, the set so far has been a lot of these decisions, which is if you are the Fishies and you are put in a position, how do you win these quote-unquote no-win scenarios, or how do you avoid them so that it's not going to get set up for you to fall down?
Quick pause before we head back into game number 2, where the Tiburones, 5-6 minutes into this game, have already gotten themselves first blood. I'm wondering now, I mean, there's so many opportunities, we rejoin the gameplay here, for Spreen to transform into a plethora of different targets. It seems like a wealth of riches, I guess, for the transformations for this Morgan, and adds such a tier to these team fights, where the Fishies feel like they have to worry about the engage from the Tsukuyomi, the bully ability of the Achilles, Blugan on this Yamoja, separating out these fights. And now suddenly we're going to have to worry about 2 of any of them, or whoever's feeling good on your team. The versatility of the Yamoja is just such a boon to your team if your mid laner is able to play this pick.
Yeah, I mean, this is just so solid, like you said, as a draft, I think, for the Tiburones. A little more high execution, and I think high execution threshold than what you're going to be facing against, but based on game number 1, and honestly what I've seen out of these players over the last year and a half at this point, but even maybe a little longer depending on which ones you want to look at, I trust them all to be able to play their gods not only at the highest level, but at a way that is going to do exactly this to Oceans and force him into a bad spot.
Oceans attempting to walk away. He'll get out of the Rivers Rebuke, but a couple double stuns to the back, making a triple stun. This has got to be obnoxious for the Kabrakan. He just cannot survive. And he will survive at the end of it, but he cannot survive the stuns for the time being, and Tiburones is continuing to put pressure on the Kabrakan. I guess when you really look at it, Gore, I mean, Kabrakan great, throwing up the wall, grabbing a stun, hopefully supplying a little burst damage to whatever target he's looking at. But you have to walk into a Yamoja, you have to walk into an Achilles, into a Morgan who can stun you out, a Heimdall who can knock you away. Feels like a tough draft for this Kabrakan to play into.
I mean, that was a perfect example not only of what Yamoja can do, but how good a Riptide can be, especially with Rivers Rebuke, and how, admittedly, Oceans only gets out of there because he's a Guardian, right? Like any other person on this team, maybe except for Chronic, although at this point, with just the shifters, maybe even still Chronic, they absolutely get burned down and killed there. And if Bluegen can find any opportunities like that, or Spreen transformed into the Emoja, it's just going to make things so much easier for them, and making so that, you know, Nehu, Rinjaru, Kirmi all have to be careful on their engage and where they're fighting, because one misstep means one clean ability from a Emoja will lock you down indefinitely.
Yep. It's been quieter on the right side of the map. Both junglers pulling their attention over there just briefly as the blue buffs have respawned. Chronic on the Sun Wukong. We've heard so much about the Bluestone Pendant, specifically paired with the Sun Wukong. I'll hold that thought as now it's Cope that's engaged on a beautiful wall here from Oceans, but a piercing moonlight from Cope will send the Tsukiyomi pinballing around. Nearly gets the kill on an Nehu on the backline, but instead it's Chronic with the long-ranged confirm who will get the kill here. Now it's the Somersault Cloud up in the air for some healing. Goes the Sun Wukong. The chase is on. The Tiburones attempting to re-engage. Haven't gotten the kill onto Oceans, but Spreen can transform into the Sun Wukong as well. Chronic has 2 thanks to the tower. This one's a 2-for-1 trade. The Fishies come out ahead of this one.
Yeah, that was just not clean from the Tiburones. I mean,
No.
Cope admittedly didn't have much of a choice. Once he hit his ult on anyone there, he's going to be diving into about 4 people that were waiting for him. I think it's a lot of investment to try and kill off Oceans of all people. Like, it just feels like a weird decision to make. I don't think shredding down this Cabrakan, especially 10 minutes in, is going to be the end-all, be-all of your gameplay. You want to slow down Kirmi. Last time, it was so much easier for you because Cope was able to do literally whatever he wanted. He had a 4-level lead. Even now, he has a 1-level lead. But if you have Kirmi anywhere near in levels to what Cope is, it means that that jungler is going to be able to impact this fight. Last game, you were able to run away with it at 7 minutes because Kirmi fell so far behind it was easy to deal with. But if he's going to be available for you, same thing there for Nehu, same thing there for Rinjaru, who actually has a level lead over there against Gaijay, then you don't invest on Oceans. Like, I don't know, that just seems like way too much. I mean, you're diving towers, you're using your transformation, your River's Rebuke, everything just to lock down the front line. And even then, you barely got him. You lost 2 people in the process. I think there's a little more they could do towards the back end of it. But honestly, I'm going to find myself saying the opposite of what I said last time. I want to see a little more farm from the Tiburones to get, you know, the Scorpions off the map. Try to find something in your favor, because otherwise you're the easy targets.
A lot invested into Bluegen here. Plenty of ultimates. You need to get this kill. It's a River's Rebuke and a couple of Riptides. The fancy moves, Bluegen, no way you survive. Not when Kirmi can collapse on that one. Well played, though. Over to the Tiburones support, and it's immediately on over to the Greater Scorpion now for the Fishies, playing this early game much, much better. Gore, it just seems like the jungle is a death zone for anyone on the Tiburones. I expressed some concern about Oceans having to walk in to the Tiburones draft. You mitigate a lot of that when you can play in these sharp, quick corridors, and you have to be face-to-face, and you can force people into these small funnels, and Fishies play that pick perfectly.
Yeah, really showcasing how good that ult can be as well, right? I mean, just the ability to create walls in Smite in the jungle is always going to be good, no matter what. Like, everything else in the kit around it is going to be what dictates whether or not they're worthwhile. And I think Oceans, even though it's only the ultimate, is showcasing that, yes, being able to just stop them from getting somewhere is solid. The thing I'm worried about, though, is, again, a very heavy investment, 3 ults to lock down 1 support, but they're going to recharge those ults. They get the Scorpion afterwards, spawns up this Gold Fury. I can't count how many times we've already seen this just this year, where they take whichever team gets the Scorpion loses the Gold Fury afterward, just because they invested so much to get the initial fight, and they weren't really prepared for the one that really mattered on the back end of that. Yes, those enhanced buffs, I really like enhanced purple buff, but I don't think it's going to be the end-all be-all here. And so the Fishies really need this Gold Fury before I can start saying that they're finding themselves successful.
Gore, the Fishies hear you, and they'll start up the Gold Fury. Bluegen again trapped down. The Riptide connects. It's Beads to try to walk away from this fight instead of getting pulled back by his own Riptide, and that'll keep his life on the line for the time being. But another engage from the Fishies spent onto Bluegen here. It's River's Rebuke, but Gore, lots of ultimates used there from the Fishies invested into trying to kill off Blugan, not successfully, so there's a small window here where the Tiburones maybe have a team fight advantage, but this looks like a team that's content just farming up and backing away and really prepping themselves for the next big fight.
Honestly, it's just kind of surprising me to see so little, I was going to say, input from everybody else. I mean, even here, Cope just feels like he's alone.
And he has to use the Piercing Moonlight for the CC immunity, making sure to point it away from the enemy team. So now Cope is the next one being eyed by the Fishies. This seems like this kind of all-in on one guy approach from the Fishies. And we'd be wrong to say it wasn't at least working in the kills department. 3-2 they're ahead, but Gore, the gold hasn't quite translated there just yet. About 500, 600, 700 gold in the lead, so certainly something, but nothing massive. XP middling as well, about 300. I mean, it feels like the Fishies are driving the pace of this game, but the Tiburones are right there in golden experience.
Yeah, they're dictating when the fights are happening, which is going to be better for them long run, right? They're choosing when these shots are going to happen. It's just not led to anything massive yet, and that yet is going to be the big one, right? You get a kill onto Blugan there in the jungle, that Gold Fury goes down just a minute ago. So if they can clean up these engages or at least get a little more damage online, which as you can see now with items coming online, they're going to be doing a pretty good job of that, then they're going to start maybe rolling over the Tiburones. One of the things that they had on the Sharks that was so much better last game was just pure teamwork early on. I will admit the safety net of a Khepri ult behind you versus even a Yamoja healing. It just makes it a lot easier, I think, for Cope to make the decision to go in because Tsukuyomi does kind of force himself to be right in your face, and sometimes that is not favorable. Example, the last fight just that happened in mid. So having that Khepri res made it a little easier for Tsukuyomi to kind of wantonly throw his life away and figure out what was going to happen. Whereas here, he does have to be a little more careful on the engagement. Blugan can heal you, but it's not going to be enough every single step of the way. And instead, you have to figure out the I guess just smoother engagement for yourself, better that is going to get you in and get you out alive. Ideally with a kill if you're on the Sharks. Because otherwise, the Fishies are in a great position to, again, continue dictating the shots and forcing the pace of this game to be what they want it to be.
Well, I love your use of wanton there. I mean, that is like high school lit flashcard level of vocabulary. And it literally was on one of my vocab tests. I'm remembering it like it was yesterday, except I obviously didn't retain it as well as you did, throwing it in to some of my commentary here. I agree with what you're saying there. I mean, obviously Yamoja is a very good pick, but you're maybe missing the Khepri res and what that brings. I also wonder how much the Tiburones are missing having that E-set in the mid lane. Morgan has had one transformation that looked pretty good in looping through and helping find a kill there in that mid lane skirmish, but the objective control and the heal and the burst damage that circle of protection brought, I think, was a big driving force for the Tiburones early on in game number one. Let's see, though, if Oceans is going to be the more recent support to get caught out here. The damage is just not there. The ultimate will separate out this fight, and Blugan will get it done himself. So now we're even in the kills department, and both of the supports just getting picked on, but Oceans now falls 3 out of 3 times. Tiburones, all 3 kills onto the Fishy support.
That's the biggest peel, though. I mean, nobody's going to be able to stop Cope if he gets into the background, save for maybe Nehu with a really good strike or a Tiger form coming out from Chronic. This allows them to get aggressive and choose, again, this fight that they won on the Tiburones.
Tiburones have left the Gold Fury, but then go back towards it, half HP on the objective now. Fishies closing that gap. Chronic stunned in. Somersault Cloud will not be there in time. Oh, the Fishies steal it. What is that? The bounce from Nehu or something? I have no idea what just stole that. Skewer from Kirmi steals it away. Sneaky from the Fishies jungler, and that is a big objective swing. Look at where the gold stands. 1,000 gold in the lead now are the Fishies. Tiburones probably felt like they were in complete control of that situation. Sometimes somebody will just pull one over on you and the Fishies get it done.
You know, a wise man once told me, I'm sure that the Tiburones are missing their E-set in that circle of protection. I feel like it was very recently as well. And honestly, I have to agree with that because of moments exactly like that. Who cares? Heat goes down there. That's probably a big kill for them. But at the end of the day, that Gold Fury, it's not like the end-all be-all of everything that is going to happen this game. But man, is that a punch to the mental and to the ego, because now all of a sudden you're just like, man, that was our fight to lose, and like Skewer of all things, like Set walked in and skewered that Gold Fury away from us. I think it just goes to show the zoning that they're missing out on, things like we had highlighted last game coming from the mid lane that are missing, and not a lot of range on Oregon either, is going to be a kind of a big issue. I didn't see a transformation there from Spreen, maybe being able to come something even with just a little bit of burst damage, or transforming into someone like Oceans, like a Bracken, or to a Yamoja and throwing up a River's Rebuke to block away the Fishies there. Would have absolutely given you an easy path to making sure that that Gold Fury was confirmed on your side. It's not the end of the game for them, even though I did just see that surrender vote get flashed up. I will say it is something that they have to start thinking about, be a little more cognizant of while they're moving forward, because otherwise Fishies can just do that for a Fire Giant. They can do it for a Pyromancer. They're not going to be too stressed around these team objectives because they're going to be ahead each time if they continue this trajectory.
Well, we're 20 minutes in, Gore, and the first tower has just fallen. GuyJ on the left side of the map knocks down the Tier 1 tower of the Fishies. So, small gold trickling back into the pockets of the Tiburones. Kirmi will solo out the Greater Scorpion here. No pushback from anyone on the Tiburones side of things. Both mid laners opting for the Spear of Desolation, but an interesting start here, I think, from Spreengor. Goes for the starter item. Immediately into the Charon's Coin. We've seen the Charon's Coin, I think, round out a few builds, but it's been a minute since I've seen it early on to start off a game. I mean, obviously you want to be able to build up those stacks. You get 20% pen early on, which might not hit its full value until a little bit later once the magical defense is built up. But maybe if you're involved in fights early and often enough, you're hoping that you can build those stacks, but Spreen just hasn't been more than once.
Yeah, it has been a very slow fight process. Actually, for both sides. For North America SCC, 7 kills at 20 minutes is incredibly low. It's at least, at minimum, half of what it should be from what we're used to expecting out of them. But that, I think, shows, again, more methodical play from both sides here, and like you said, doing things, not going for that Rada Tahuti, kind of losing out, I would argue, on that huge amount of burst power you get at the very front of picking that item up, even if it is a little cheaper to get literally anything else in the game at that point. It is definitely showcasing here.
Here's a big team fight, and it's Oceans who starts it off, but it's Oceans who's left alone, stunned down, execute wide from Heed, does not connect, but GuyJ's there to clean up the leftovers. The rest of the fight, though, still brawling, and it's still Tiburones controlling the front line here. 2 for none as we stand. Renjaru trying to sidestep it. Heed will connect on the damage. This time, Chronic off the somersault. Cloud grabs a double. The Sun Wukong makes all the difference in the world as Cope continues to chase down Nehu. Chronic and Nehu, the last 2 alive for the Fishies. The Tiburones have 3 still.
You lose your front lines if you're the Tiburones, which sucks, but admittedly, those are the 2, if I'm going to lose in a team fight, I'd rather be losing. It means that the farm time is going to be up for Cope as well as Spreen. They each are able to have a little more impact in this game. You're going to be able to knock down a tower, and with only 2 to defend, there's not a whole lot that the Fishies can do, at least for a Tier 1 tower right here. It should also ideally translate to a Pyromancer. Again, just take some of the chunks of the lead away from the Fishies. I don't go FG yet, but
no.
I do think it gives you a very distinct advantage here. That was the team fight I was really worried about, the capability of coming together that we saw in game number 1. What we just got to see there right in that last fight from the Tiburones is just stronger. It felt like more of a unit, more cohesive play, clearer shot calling that comes through, and decisive target switching as well. Spreen with a solid transformation. If Chronic doesn't happen to be in that spot where he's able to get 2 kills on the back end, it could very easily have been not only a deicide, but at least a 3 for 0. And so very solid again on the Fishies on being able to pull something back, but there's only so much you can do when you're pulling a little bit back from a deficit as opposed to dictating the pace of the fight and winning it yourselves.
That's important for the Tiburones. I think if they lose that fight, this game tilts even further in favor of the Fishies. Massive strike from Nehu, immediately followed up by Oceans, but of course the River's Rebuke is right there. Oceans down for the 5th time this game. Now Kirmi's found another kill as well. GuyJ sends one flying off and away, and Renjaru will clean up the rest of the damage onto GuyJ here as well. Chronic rampaging through these team fights consistently. Nehu with the long-range strife hits it as well. Kirmi survives 4 for 2. Big fight for the Fishies.
Again, it's just this weird overinvestment into Oceans. Like, Oceans is 0-5, he's level 15, and he's Cabrakan. Stop doing it, right? Like, just stop focusing him. Kirmi gets into your backline like it's nothing. Shred Spreen continues to onslaught there onto GuyJ. Makes a nice, easy opening for his frontliners and Rinjaru. Like, yes, they lose Rinjaru in the process, their carry, but at this point, who cares? I mean, Danzaburou is doing so much damage, it's worthwhile that he goes down right there. Same thing for Kirmi. It's even better that Kirmi is the one that gets to stay alive. Nehu, like you had highlighted at the beginning of that, hits such a beautiful strife. Like, there's so many better targets to get than this Cabrakan right now that I do not understand the immediate want to drop everything to kill off Oceans. Especially when Chronic's 5-0-4, and Nehu's not dying either. You have two very distinct issues just right there. If you're not able to get to the mid laner and kill him at least once in your 8 kills, you're not really finding the appropriate targets. And 5 of your 8 kills are also the enemy support. And he's only 1 level, not even a full level behind. You're wasting your time in that investment. It's obviously not been working out the last 4 times you did it. I just don't understand why they keep going in on him. And obviously, there's still a lot of follow-up from the Fishies afterward, especially coming from Chronic.
Yeah, Chronic is absolutely running through game number 2 here. See if Oceans can get a stun onto Heed. Really, this is just to force Heed back from his tier 1 tower. Chronic is here, though. 9 of 10 affected kills with the Sun Wukong. Built for a bit of a hybrid build here, Goremizer. Some physical power. Heartseeker will certainly help in these fights, but bruisery in the core of that build there is allowing for the Sun Wukong to get in these fights and get a little bit more active. He uses the ultimate to escape. River's Rebuke immediately answers the Ocean's ultimate. We've seen that time and time and time again. You wonder if that's a worthwhile trade. I wonder what the thought process is there from Bluegen, if it's just so much easier to say, all right, if Oceans drops his wall, I'll use my ultimate every single time just to be sure that nobody kills us. But then you're missing that River's Rebuke for potentially something else later on in the fight. So maybe a bit of a double-edged sword. Tough decision-making for the Tiburones support.
Yeah, it's that awkward moment of Ocean saying, I'll block you off, and then Bluegen saying, well, I'll block your team off, right? So, like, you're not necessarily at a net gain when you use your ult there. You're, like you said, just kind of saving yourself and keeping yourselves alive a little bit longer. But losing a massive teamfight ult, things that I think are very solid to have around a very low health objective, especially if it causes someone like Nehu to lose visual on, say, a fire giant sometime in the next few minutes. Like, things like that, or that River's Rebuke can really come in handy. Or, kind of on the opposite side of that, if it's used to block them away, not just in terms of blocking their vision and their bodies from getting over there, but straight up making sure they're locked away from the fire giant pit. It's going to be able to come back off cooldown here pretty soon. It's a little behind what Oceans has, so Oceans has an opening.
Oceans now has an opening, though, to get stunned out by the Tiburones, so the early poke damage going the side, the Chaos side of things. So Fishies playing a bit defensively here. Kirmi's going to be a big problem in these fights as well. Only 1 upgraded shell that's over there for GuyJ in the SPL yesterday. Poor Layers, what was it, 4 upgraded shells that the Bolts picked up against Layers when Layers was playing set yesterday? That feels real bad, but 1 feels bad enough. It's River's Rebuke this time, wouldn't you guess it, to separate out Ocean. So the first kill of the fight goes on to the Cabrakan, but in the backline, Chronic has kept Cope out of the fight. Another big strife connects. The damage still flying through from the Fishies, and Rinjaru finds the opening kill. Kirby's there to follow up immediately as well. Now Spreen has to stealth out, try to keep himself alive, but he's not going to keep Cope alive on the other end. Chronic improves to 6-0-6. And these team fights have just not been figured out by the Tiburones, 3-for-1.
Yeah, Fishies, I will chalk it up to just having a bad game 1, right? Like, you fall behind way too early on, that's going to be what tends to happen. But right now, Tiburones, like, whatever was game 1, like, it almost feels like a fluke they were able to play that well, because they're doing the same thing. 0-6 now over there for Oceans. And, I mean, it was following a checklist. Rinjaru and Kirmi, Chronic, all of a sudden get into the fight, and guess what? These high priority targets that should be dying and should be your focus come in and slaughter everybody on your team. I don't know what the conversation is on the side of the Tiburones, but this is one of those moments where it just, again, it just feels like a different team than we saw take a lead in game number 1. I don't know what they need to do to get it through their heads that their team fight priority needs to change, but that's literally it right now. I mean, there's not much else they can do. Their farming has been solid. Their defense has been solid. Their survivability has been really great. I'm kind of on your side. If I see Kirmi doing this well, I wish those Aegises were upgraded shells. I think it would be much easier to help deal with him and Rinjaru and Chronic all together if you had not only the health there, I guess the shielding that comes from those shells, but those block stacks that would now start stacking up on each other if you use them properly. But they're going to be sitting here, again, a lot of save yourself mentality, and so far it's led them to a 7,000 gold deficit. There's a very tall task ahead of them, a lot of gold on the map to try and cut that back, but you're stuck defending against a team with 4 Fire Giant members. You're going to lose this tier 1. You will absolutely lose a tier 2. And there's a good chance you're going to lose a Phoenix in this push. This is a great spot for the Fishies.
It's been a slow start to the push, but there's still 2.5 minutes remaining. Plenty of time to at least get one of these Phoenixes taken down. Now, Gore, a lot of the River's Rebukes have been used by Bluegen in immediate response to Ocean's locking off one of Bluegen's teammates. Maybe now under the Phoenix is a better opportunity, with these fights being a little bit more funneled, a little bit more centric, to catch somebody else out other than Ocean's walking his way in. Interesting call here from the Fishies. Let's, instead of rolling the dice on this Fire Giant just yet, go for the tier 2 tower in mid, and then maybe start to look over towards the right-hand side of the map as well. When you have this amount of time, Gora, maybe this is the right call to just kind of slow things down, and Cope is just going to get collapsed upon here. I'm not sure what Cope is attempting to do. That's a solo kill from Kirmi, and now suddenly the base defense is just that much harder. Bluegen has to use the River's Rebuke, and again in reply to Oceans throwing up the walls as well. It just seems like Fishies, from minute 5, have declared the pace of this game on their side.
Yeah, and that tends to be what happens. If you let a set get up to 5-1 and 9 where he's not getting killed off, yeah, he's going to be able to dictate it. Like, same amount of items, same upgrades overall. I mean, different itemization at the end of the day than what you're seeing out of Cope, but he's able to jump into the back line and perform a lot better. He feels safer. His team has his back a little bit better. The team fight has been clean. Like you said, since 5 minutes into this, it's been 26 minutes where the Fishies have just been choosing where they want to fight. The Tiburones had maybe one call in all of that really said they wanted to run the game.
Well, this is 4 versus 5, and the other team has FG. Good luck, Tiburones, underneath your Phoenix. Kirmi, left alone with Spreen. Wouldn't you guess it? The set is able to do set things here. This game appears as if it's coming to a close unless a miracle defense occurs here. It's a great wall from Ocean's. Heed has to use his execute to escape this time. Nehu finishes the game on a killing spree. All of the pressure from the Tiburones goes on to Oceans, and it does not pay off. Fishies will take game number 2 in 32 minutes.
Yeah, and you know what? You look at this one, Fishies, they addressed the draft problems they had in game 1. They adjusted them, and they came back in and played a good game of Smite in game 2. You see Tiburones, they come in, they have a good draft game 1, maybe a more difficult draft in game 2, but the draft wasn't the problem there. It was just the fights and their prioritization. Like, a lot was falling down from them pretty much from the get-go there. So there's a lot to maybe just go ahead, hit that mental reset button, come into game 3 now, and just hope for a little bit better team play.
Seems like a game of X's and O's at this point, where Tiburones had all of the control in game 1. Great halftime adjustments from the Fishies going into game 2, and now it's the Tiburones again who have to adjust to the new adjustments. It all comes down to game number 3, Gore. We'll have that for you right after the break.
Well, Mifflin, the Tiburones learned a valuable lesson that game. Could you tell me what it is? Could you give an educated guess for me? I don't know why I'm making you do this, but all of a sudden I am.
Well, look, put me on the spot, Aggro. It's fine. If my guess would be maybe prioritize someone that isn't the support. Am I close?
No, it's that fish are friends, not food. The fishies and the sharks end up not going the other way. It's been a bit since the beginning of the desk, baby. We love to see it, but the Tiburones do not end up getting the victory here in this one. Miff, I mean, I just felt like the draft worked out really, really well for the Fishies in this game. And as you highlighted, Blugan ended up being, or excuse me, Oceans ended up being too much of a focus for the Tiburones in this game. He died, but the rest of the team flourished.
Yeah, maybe don't use every single one of your cooldowns to shut down the already 0-5 Cabrakan, right? And then wonder to yourselves, okay, how did Set get into my back line? Why is Nehu free casting on me? Well, it's probably because you used 4 ultimates, including your Piercing Moonlight, to shut down the young Cabrakan there. Outside of that, it felt like potentially the Tiburones lost a little bit of the narrative on what their team composition was looking to do. It seems like they were a little bit over-willing to group up for the 5-on-5 engagement, where I think their draft really did lend itself more so to the pick type of playstyle.
Also, man, the more I watch Wukong, the more I think this god is problematic if you don't come in with a plan. Chronic looked very, very strong in this game. The dive combo between him and Kirmi felt really, really hard to stop. And as a result, the Fishies end up on top. 7-0-7 for Chronic in this game. 6-1-11 for Kirmi. Oof. I mean, you look at the scores. Ocean's 0-7. Sure, man, you got him. But at the end of the day, Nehu pumped out more than double Spreen's damage. Renjaru significantly ahead of Gaijay as well. Fishies just executed a little bit better than the Tiburones did in Game 2.
They did, and I think, again, it's probably due to the draft as well. I think the Fishies set themselves up much better in Game 2, but now the Sharks kind of put on point a little bit, kind of got to keep their head on their shoulders, maybe adjust their P's and B's a little bit in this one, or maybe just a strategy. Sure, you can keep killing Oceans, you can ruin that man's KDA, but at the end of the day, it won't win you the game.
Let's see what adjustments they want to make, because Game 3 now looms the undefeated record for the Tiburones on the line. And the Fishies trying to put themselves in that top 3. This would put them at 2-1. That would match them with the Tiburones, tie them for second place, with only the Sturdy Artisans remaining undefeated if that were to come to pass. So let's see what happens. The Tiburones are back in that first pick position. First pick's been undefeated so far here in this set.
It has been. Tiburones in that first game was Tsukiyomi in their first lock. We'll see if the Fishies trying to adjust their bans a little bit to prevent that from coming through. It seems like they're not really too concerned with Tsukiyomi as a top pick, as they could have taken it themselves in Game 2 and elected not to. But so far, bans looking largely unchanged. Sobek and Iset actually getting banned. It seems like the Fishies are pretty happy with the adaptations they made in the last match.
Why wouldn't you be? You ended up finding the W. You might as well keep that going, though of course things will have to change as you get into that first pick slot versus the second pick slot. What's with these teams in first picks banning the gods that they played in the last game? It's a Morrigan ban from Tiburones. Remember, they're the ones who picked it, and then Spring did not exactly have a stellar performance, so they end up banning it away, maybe from themselves, but also, of course, from the Fishies on the other side. As the Geb ban stays, with Guan Yu now banned, that means something among Tiamat and Set and Tsukiyomi is going to be open. 2 of those 3 are going to be open, at least.
Gonna almost promise you it's not gonna be it's the Tiamat. The Tiamat's open aggro.
Okay.
This is a Category 5 natural disaster. The only thing that I can imagine that changes up the first pick for the Sharks here is if they just don't realize that Tiamat is available. It's gotta be that first slot. That god's so versatile, not only in the mid lane. We gotta see Aquarius and the SCC level played over in the solo, and it is incredibly dominant. Nah, they're not gonna lock in that set. No way.
I don't know, man. Kirmi looked really good on it last game. Look at it this way, right? Kirmi has proven that he can win a game on Set. The Fishies haven't proven that they can win a game on Tiamat. Now, you could argue that it's a lot easier to win that game on Tiamat, but that's the decision that they're going to make. Tsukiyomi locked in initially. Tiamat is an option here for the Fishies. We're waiting on production to hook it up. It's a Tiamat hover and a Tiamat selection.
That's a good draft over there.
Yeah, we could call it here. The draft looks good for what the Fishies want to do. I mean, what do you do against the Tiamat Myth? Surely it isn't just pack it up and go home as soon as she's locked in.
It isn't, but it's not far off, aggro. That Tiamat is so hard to deal with. I think one of your best options is trying to shut it down in the early game, which is why we saw Aquarius taking it to solo the only other time I can remember it making it through P's and B's, because it's a little bit harder to dedicate your time to ganking that god over there. Outside of that, maybe you want a little bit of dot damage on it to just make sure you're able to strip away those scales quickly, which is something that Raijin should be able to afford, as well as additional survivability in the fear to get her away. But Tiamat takes a concentrated effort of multiple people to shut down, because she's so versatile in that mage stance. She's got long range artillery strike damage. Hop into that 4-legged stance, all of a sudden you're the tankiest person on the map, and you might only have Breastplate of Valor in your item slot.
Listen, man, she can't be that good. I lost on her in Assault last night, so that's all I'm saying. You know, there's got to be some sort of weakness. That is definitely not the reason why. Camazotz is the pick now to go alongside the Tsukiyomi. So now, as you mentioned, the only time we've seen Tiamat in the NASCC was actually the solo lane for Aquarius. You think about how it's going to play out now. Tsukiyomi has seen a lot of play in solo, particularly from Meerkat. Camazotz has been seen in jungle the majority of the time, at least between these 2 teams, but certainly can flex over to that solo lane. Based on this draft, it's looking to me like Tiamat mid, Tsukiyomi solo, and Camazotz in the jungle for Kirmi, but we'll have to wait and see if that ends up being the case. As the Tiburones decide to take away Ranjaru's, Dan Zaburo, probably a good call. He looked pretty strong on that last game.
And then on the other side, the Fishies remove King Arthur and Ares. And I think I agree with your general rundown there, aggro. That makes the most sense to me, but it also opens up your Tiamat to the most danger throughout the early, especially considering the Sharks have picked up a set who can get involved pretty early on. Sharks round out their last bans with that Athena, trying to get rid of some of that global presence. I think that's incredibly intelligent. And also surprising, I guess the excitement of seeing Tiamat make her way through made me forget about how strong Athena actually is. But now, where are we going to go next with this slot? Seems like it's going to be a Ymir lock-in for the Fishies. And again, that's a really strong front line already. All 4 of the Fishies locks could just be frontline spearhead draft kind of composition here. Just have Tiamat walk in with you.
Tiamat does feel like at times that the damage is a little bit inconsistent. If you miss that ranged first ability, you can be a little bit low in the damage department. Her ults really don't do that much in terms of damage the vast majority of the time. So you're going to need to get some damage from these frontliners. Luckily, Tsukiyomi, Camazotz, Ymir end up doing a lot of damage at the same time. So you'll probably be A-okay. But at the same time, I mean, we're talking so much about this Tiamat and the competition for the Fishies. The Tiburones have quietly gotten themselves a pretty good lineup here. I mean, now you've got the Set and the Awilish. I mean, so it looks like Set solo at this point for the Tiburones. And Awilish is the pick for Cope. Like, that is his signature selection. You've got knock-up via the Cerberus ult. You've got multiple leaps on the other side with the Tiamat and the Camazotz. I like what the Tijuana Sharks have put together here.
But that leap on Tiamat, do you really want to gravity surge a 4-legged stance Tiamat towards you and then hit her twice and then feather step, you're kind of not dealing a ton of damage there. I think, if anything, this Wheelish is going to focus all of her time on trying to shut down everyone else on the map. Maybe the Kamazots, maybe even the Tsukiyomi, but fighting Tiamat in the early as a Wheelish is going to be incredibly difficult. But as you already said, the draft does look good for the Sharks. I really like how this Cerberus is going to be able to interact into Tsukiyomi and Ymir in particular. I think that's going to be a lot of the target selection throughout the early game, trying to establish an early lead and then transition yourselves there. But what does that mean about this set? Is it going to be Apollo Cerberus in lane with set out of solo and a Wheelish jungle? That's pretty good, but it's going to have a lot of a hard time fighting into this Kamazots and matching that sustain.
Well, the Tiburones de Tijuana, their undefeated record is on the line. Let's see if they can complete the 2-1 victory up against the Fishies.
Plenty of moving and shaking to be done here, and where all of these gods land when the dust settles. It is Heed over in the solo lane on the set. Cope, of course, in the Wheelix out of the jungle. Bluegan will then be playing Cerb support. Gore, we've seen a lot of Cerberus bans, and we'll get back to the Cerberus pick here in a little bit. Chronic on the Tsukiyomi solo lane, Kirmi, jungle, Kamazots, and of course Nehu on the Tiamat in the mid lane. So let's start off with the big one here. Tiamat finally makes it through. One game played up to this point, one game won up to this point. What's the deal with this pick? Why is she so strong, Gore? Give me the old scientific rundown.
A lot of survivability and capability to turn damage around on you, as well as being able to lock things down for yourself, right? I think she just has... There's a lot in her kit. That's the easiest way, like the big blanket statement. If you're wondering how to deal with Tiamat, it is to recognize that she's going to be able to do a lot. Like Mifflin had said, if you're Cope here and you gravity surge Tiamat, you punch, you go for the feather step, you get some damage out there, and then it's all going to start coming back at you. So Tiamat has the capability of getting 2 buffs on. That's already something that's going to be great. Spawning some minions to help out with lane pushing already sounds pretty good, as well as capabilities to lock down a good stun, long lines of damage, and setup that's capable for them, as well as a good movement ability. Like, it's not necessarily one that I'm looking at as like your best chance of always getting out alive, but it's enough to make sure that you'll be able to create some space for yourself, along with, again, the way Consume works, the way the Outburst works, which is just going to be some good damage and knockups. There's a lot of safety and peel that Tiamat has to keep herself and her teammates alive, or kind of, if you want to run it the other way, what we saw when Aquarius picked this a couple of weeks ago out of the solo lane, there's a lot of knockups and stuns and setups to really get your team rolling in the middle of a team fight, while you maybe don't get all the glory of the kills.
Sure, and all of the fray that's happened here, Renjaru has already used his beads. Gaijay hit the autos, one more! The body block, from Oceans is there, and Gaijay will not finish off the kill. I mean, perfect setup earlier on. Bluegan just walked at Renjaru a couple minutes in, and Renjaru had to use his beads, and then there is the follow-up attempt for the kill. One missed auto somewhere in that fight separates First Blood from nothing, and then beautiful body blocking from Oceans keeps his hunter alive. But it's all about now the fallout from that engagement. Renjaru and Oceans are going to be beneath their Tier 1 tower for the next couple of minutes.
They're trying to strip away this lane Scorpion. Again, a little bit of healing once you take that one, so they're going to be able to get that on the side of the Tiburones. The Fishies aren't out of it just yet. Renjaru doesn't have those beats still for another minute, so there's still plenty of time to work with. But like you said, losing that First Blood there, now Renjaru knows what to expect. And so it's going to be a little more difficult, I think, to find that same lockdown and try to find the kills, the damage necessary to really turn that one around. This is the one that's kind of interesting to me. We've seen Set solo. We've seen Tsukiyomi solo. I don't know that I've actually seen Set solo versus Tsukiyomi solo happen.
Right.
Like the 2 assassins at the same time. I'm really excited to watch if that duo lane, or that solo lane, I should say, ends up kind of really popping off.
More fighting happening in the duo lane. Gaijay uses the beads. Wall is up from Oceans, and Bluegan will end up being First Blood. With the way that this lane had gone in the first couple of minutes, if you told me that the Fishies were going to be the ones to get the first kill, I would have laughed at you, but a fantastic wall from Oceans and a bit of an overcommit from Bluegan and Gaijay. And that's all she wrote there for First Blood. Renjaru in and out of the wall mitigates most of the damage there that Gaijay had once his passive stacked on up. That's an easy first blood over the Fishies. We'll see if Cope can get anything done on a Nehu. Big burst damage onto this Tiamat. She'll ground herself now, provide a little extra tankiness. Kirmi in on the chase, misses the follow-up ability. Bat out of hell. Not there for the damage. Playing with fire as Cope, but he'll survive.
I mean, this is one of those things, specifically if I'm looking for a way to, let's just say to make you feel better, right? If I'm a support player and I die at level 3, what I'll tell my carry is, hey, at least you get some solo farm, right? Like I'm not there for that, so you're going to be able to technically get a little bit ahead because of that, right? Like, there's some math in there that maybe favors you a little bit, but ultimately that is a big frustration point, like you said, because of the fact that they had Rinjaru literally one hit from dead and just weren't quite able to make it, whether GuyJ or Blugan potentially missed one auto a little bit earlier in that fight, or if it just comes down to Oceans having some of the best body blocks that we got to see in the last 3 games so far. I think it comes down to the fact that you are going to be feeling that one a little bit mentally, right? So you just have to bounce back. It's not too big in the levels so far. Rinjaru is going to be 6 over GuyJ's 5, but he's not so crazy ahead. Same thing here for Oceans over Blugan, that it's going to be the end-all, be-all. It does still open up a lot of opportunities to get aggressive.
Nehu will leap on away, and now it's this Cerberus ultimate to pull the Tiamat back in from range. Heed will close the gap. Oh, it's a detonate from Oceans, and it's beautiful. A double kill out of the Ymir. Yeah, killing spree for the Ymir. He desperately trying to get an extra kill here, but the Fishies say no way. A big swing here, Gordon. Nehu goes down, brings 2 assists with him, and Oceans continues to wreak havoc here in the early game.
I mean, really good for Oceans to be able to pick that up, but I think better, like, Nehu gets low, but plays that Tiamat in such a way that, one, is still providing a lot of health, even at low health, and then was able to turn it around in such a way that if you kill Tiamat, which they kind of overcommitted to doing, you put yourself in a bad position otherwise. That was not how I expected that solo fight to go. I mean, Cope being able to get one back there onto Chronic is definitely going to start pulling the reins back in favor of the Tiburones. Just a little bit, not too much on the right-hand side. There's a lot of this game, Dave, that's going to come to how much you commit into killing off Nehu, as well as how well these assassins can do on either side. I think I like Set Awelish a little better in the late game, just in terms of their capabilities of getting things done on their own. But the thing is you don't have to get it done on your own. You've got a lot of peel and teammates like Nehu with Kirmi and Chronic. Those 3 should just be setup machines. Oh, add in Oceans, yeah, the Ymir, because he's going to be impacting this game. It feels like there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the Fishies and their assassins specifically to find a lot of help and a lot of kills as the game progresses. And so more pressure, I would even argue, on the Tiburones to have the bounce back that is necessary. Yep. They've got a small deficit right now, already about 700, 800 gold. Not a crazy amount, but something that they have to really work to alleviate, because otherwise I think the Fishies could pretty easily run away with this one.
That was an important pullback kill there for Cope. That individual kill keeps the jungle from getting too far out of control, because Kirmi has just been able to farm up this entire time. Even with that 1 kill advantage for Cope, that extra death has put him about a half level behind. Could have been a full level had he not been able to find the kill over onto Chronic. So at least a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel now for the Tiburones. They are considering a blue buff invade here, but everyone from the Fishies is aware. There's a ward down that's spotted out Heed. Spreen is here from the mid lane as well. Only the Hunters are not participating. Both Hunters can join the fight with those global ultimates. Blugan immediately locked down, but he'll use the Stygian Torment to pull a couple back in towards himself. Beautiful wall from Oceans. Another detonate and another kill on over to the Ymir. Will he be able to return the kill? No, but Spreen will. Thunder crash in offensively, and Chronic is now trying to escape. The Tiburones feel like they're winning this fight, and they probably are numbers-wise, but Heat has overextended, and that keeps things in the side of the Fishies here. A 2-for-1 trade. GuyJ has no mana, and he's on the opposite side of the lane from where he wants to be. Well-timed beads keep the Apollo in the fray behind his minions.
I like Rinjaru's call there. There's a lot of options on the board, but with minions around trying to get the damage done to GuyJ, if he hits you just a few more times with those minions around, you're dead. Yeah, it's not going to necessarily matter. I will give props, like you said, to Ocean's good walls, good detonates so far on these ults to make sure things go their way. maybe not the one person I'd like to have 4 kills on my team.
Correct.
I don't mind Ymir being 4-1, but it definitely feels like if anybody else was able to confirm those, especially either your Assassins or this Tiamat, might be a little bit easier for you as everyone's leveled up. But he's going to be making a big impact. I think Ocean's getting some levels and getting a lead over Blugan is going to slowly start to stir the pot. But I'm starting to notice, again, a similar issue to what I had in the last game. Half the kills so far for the Fishies are on to Blugan. There's a certain point where if he's not falling behind pretty heavily, it's not necessarily worth committing. Although I will say I think he's going to have more of an impact than a Cabrakan will in the late game team fight. So definitely somebody that's still worth worrying about. But Oceans, the setup they have, the way Tiamat's been playing, the damage numbers they have are pretty solid. But I'm a little worried for them. I think Fishies right now are winning on some stipulations that their mid-game, their early game, depending on where you want to slice this one, is still a little more in favor in terms of their draft. Whereas Set and Cope, I think, are going to do, the Set and a Wheelish, I should say, are just going to start popping off as this game gets a little longer. Their itemization,
Right.
I think, is going to really, really give them some fluidity and movement in these team fights. And so if they can keep it about this even, where it's mainly 500 gold, if even, between the teams, I expect more out of
Nice.
them.
Well played there from Cope to sidestep out the freeze. Ocean's another good wall, but that'll separate the fight this time. Cope pulls Kiermi right back through, and that buys time for GuyJ to swoop on in. Heat has found a kill, and so has GuyJ. But Renjaru turns around the damage to the tune of 1. Spreen still full HP. Thunder Crash in. Raiju connects, and Oceans will finally go down for a second time here this game. It's a double kill from Heed. A massive fight for the Tiburones. That's a 4 for 1.
Remember that joke I made where we were 14 kills in, or we had 7 kills in at 20
Right,
minutes, and I
right,
said it
right.
should be about twice this much because of what we've been experiencing
spot
in
on.
SCC? This is what I expected, right? 14 kills in 10 minutes. This feels a little bit more the pace, and it's exactly what you want. When you have all these assassins, this is where you're not surviving as fast, right? Cope's going to die very quickly, Kiermi, Chronic, Heed, all going to die very quickly, but they're going to get something done in that life period. It's just whether or not it's going to be worthwhile. Cope bought enough time, helped get a kill there, and allow GuyJ to rotate over, but mainly, you get to see Heed start to really find their stride. This set looked good for Kiermi last game, and so far, it's feeling pretty good for Heat so far. 3-2, maybe not as flashy in terms of the KDA, but still finding a lot of pressure here, and I expect it to only get better for them as time goes on. The biggest downside I have is once again looking at, not even, I guess, objective secure, but objective pressure. I feel like fights around Gold Fury and Fire Giant, depending on the ults that are available, maybe favor these Fishies just a little bit more because of Nehu's existence in the world. I think Spreen is going to be able to confirm the damage and maybe have a better ult for that. And, Blugan, once you start factoring in that team fight ultimate, it does help even out the scales a little bit. But with the Ymir and this Tiamat, I still have a lot of high expectations for those two in tandem in terms of their
As you
setup
should.
potential. I think if the Tiburones don't tread lightly around them, that's going to be a pretty big turning point for the Fishies to kind of plant their heels in the ground and push back.
Gore, on the other side, how about this rise of Raijin that we've seen over the last couple of weeks? 203 now here in this game for Spreen. It's something about the ability to survive on the back, but also dive in and engage, provide your team with a little bit. Just seems so helpful. Greater Scorpion locked down by the Fishies here. Wondered if maybe GuyJ had weaved some damage in there, but he had not. But we kind of continue to see this Raijin pick work its way into some of these draft score, Miser, and I'm yet to see it look horrible, to be honest. I think in the games that I'm remembering, it's looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think he just feels good. He's a good mage who does good damage and is able to, like you said, get away if he needs to and do a lot of damage like that to Oceans in the matter of an instant.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of why the Raijin might get picked up here. Perfect collapse from the Tiburones. Oceans down 4-3-2. Remember, he was 4-0 at one point. And now Oceans 4-3. Blugan low health, but that's not going to slow him down. Instead, he wants to move in. Hey, Gore, didn't you say something about the team that gets the Scorpion loses the gold? It might be the case here, as the Tiburones go back towards the big objective. Instead, it's Cope looking to scrap just a little bit more. Kiermi and Renjaru, 2 versus 5 is what this is looking like. Blugan closing the gap. Stun not there. but Kirmi has the DOT applied to the Tiburones support. It's a killing spree now for Spreen as the Raijin continues to work his way up the damage charts and up the kill feed as well. Chronic is going to take this opportunity to invade some back camps, but the Tiburones have their eyes on the Fury.
Yeah, Chronic gets a blue buff, both back experience camps, but now he has to make this rotation over. But look at his pathing. This is really good. Nobody on the Tiburones expects him. That's a kill.
Just going to die here because Chronix, excuse me, is right there. Spreen stunned, Aegis down, but the rest of the fight still not going for the Fishies. Piercing Moonlight might be enough to get the kill on a Spreen. It's a double kill. Beautiful pathing from Chronic over from the soul lane. Heat is going to try to chase down Kirmi here as GuyJ gets whittled away by Oceans and Chronic there. A beautiful rotation, Gordon. It makes all the difference.
I mean, that's just good from them. Bluegan overstays his welcome. I saw him start to back about 3 times throughout all of that. There's a moment where I think Tiburones back off and get a Gold Fury. There's an alternate universe where it broke off at that exact point. They just go get the Gold Fury and back away, or they force the fight to be more in kind of the middle neutral zone of the jungle as opposed to over there on the Fishies side of things. But instead, this time around, they chase a little deep. They get some kills, but they're just a little too far forward, right? Like, they take a couple too many steps. And unfortunately for them, that's all you need if you're the Fishies. Chronic with a really good rotation. That slow boil over there. No wards until just now up on the map for the Tiburones. And even then, I see 3. 2 of them are in one spot, so they're not really getting a lot of vision over there, really, for themselves either. I mean, that was just easy for this Tsukuyomi to walk right in, and like you said, Bluegan was just dead from the get-go, and then at that point, it's what damage can you get down? He's 3-1-7 now. That was, I can't get over how clean that was.
Well, I spoke too soon on the team that takes the Scorpion, losing the Fury. Still a chance for the Fishies to get the big one. This would be a massive swing. I mean, gold is literally dead even at this point, save some double digits trickling in on one side or the other. So the Gold Fury fight and the Fury itself is going to be the biggest pivot we've seen so far in this game at 15.5 minutes in. Spreen finally taken down again, though, largely by the flank around the backside from Chronic. This pick allows Spreen to be safe, aggressive, whatever you might need here in your draft. I think Bluegan has done a pretty good job, though, Gore, outside of a bit of an overstay there in that last fight at 0-4-8. I mean, it's hard to keep up with Ymir that had 4 kills on the board before anyone else in the game did. But I think the Cerberus has looked good and provided some good setup and even some peel for the rest of the team.
Yeah, and you can see 4 pairs of beads over there for the Fishies. Cerberus is going to be able to get those pretty much every single time, as long as he lands on any of those 4 that have it, and especially Oceans, because Oceans will get pulled no matter what. They're going to be able to either burn the beads or get a pull, which is great follow-up then for Spreen to be able to find a lot of that damage we were highlighting earlier when he killed off Oceans. But the downside is, again, it's just a vision battle right now. Fishies know where the Tiburones are before the Tiburones do. Like, they see you out there way before you're able to actually engage on the fight.
It's a weird game when the Tiamat is not at the forefront of our minds. Spreen has to use his ultimate just to survive. He's got to get his damage off. And he's at least done a little bit of that, but the dive from the Fishies is just too strong. There's the Tiamat. A double kill for Nehu out of the mid lane. Cope, the last surviving member, preventing a deicide, but Kirmi is going to try to chase this one down, but he's not super worried about it without that bat out of hell. It's a damn near deicide for the Fishies here, 17 minutes in, and the Gold Fury goes over as well.
Look, as you had highlighted, gold was pretty much even. If I see anyone respawn and leave the base on the side of the Tiburones without any wards in their inventory, they're losing this game. That's like, I mean, like they're losing this purely off of vision right now, and that's the biggest issue. Like, the Fishies were able to plan and plot everything before the Tiburones engaged there because they knew where every member was going to be. I mean, they could see so deep into the jungle. Hovering around the red buff was the safe zone at that point. But, I mean, look at it now. Even some of those wards having despawned, it's still left side vision. Like, they see 90% of the jungle they need to over there. And I'm seeing a lot of people that don't have wards in their inventory on the side of the Tiburones. I see 1 sentry there for Heed that was already in his pocket. And then GuyJ picked up a single ward. This Fire Giant hasn't spawned just yet because we still have Forp sitting down over there holding it down on the lava pits. But there's going to need to be a lot of changes in my eyes for vision, because otherwise you're going to get the same fight over and over again. It's going to make it easier for Chronic, Kirmi, Nehu, Oceans all to choose where they engage and where they set their abilities because they just know where you're walking.
Yep.
And they're not even skimping on it. I mean, they're already showcasing like 4 wards on this right-hand side. They're shifting their vision where they think it needs to be, and they know what they're doing for the next fight.
Do you support main Gore? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Do you main support? It's
Only,
all right. So
only support.
So you're not wrong, first and foremost. You're absolutely not wrong, but it's the support's siren call to go out and buy more wards, and unfortunately for the moment, there's no more remaining for the Tiburones to drop down. A bunch already on the map, though, to separate out some of the vision, but Fishies maybe a little bit more comfortable in that regard. This is a 2-level difference, but Cope happy to take this fight because the reinforcements are right in there behind him. Kiermi leaves, but half of his HP still there. Cope lost a good chunk as well, so maybe not as lopsided as you would hope. Gaija uses the ultimate, assuming that a fight is brewing, and he'll drop down. Ranjaru did the same, to be fair. Ranjaru back into that fight as well, so what looked like it might be a lopsided engagement, you could keep Ranjaru on the left while the rest of your team goes right if you're the Fishies. Now both hunters have to join the fight the old-fashioned way.
Well, luckily, Kiermi doesn't burn their ult. That would have been the big loss for Fishies, right? If Kiermi had to ult to get out of there, use that bat out of hell, but having that survivability back up to full health kind of puts it, like you said, at virtually nothing, just ult for ult there for Ranjaru and Gaija. There's 1 tower difference, 2 tower difference overall. No, yeah, 1 tower difference. I didn't notice right-hand side solo already down. So just 1 number separating, realistically, these 2 teams. A lot of gold sitting in the side of the Fishies, about 4,000 as they line their pockets a little bit better. But that doesn't mean too much at the end of the day. Some of that gold is going towards items. A lot of it's going towards wards. I'm going to keep highlighting that. It's not often I get to go on ward rants, but I can guarantee the wards placed per member of Fishies is just going to be higher because of the way they've been playing. And it's 13-13. Supports are tied. Junglers are drastically different. It's just all in all, the vision that they're being awarded on the side of the Fishies is a little bit cleaner. It's helping them out. There's definitely been more. But look, every time I look up to the right map, it's covered in red in the jungle. I just see a bunch of red dots, and it's exactly what you want to see for them because they're just a little bit ahead where they need to be. Maybe those wards were too early from the Tiburones. Some of them may be coming from the free ward as well because all these nice, again, just 50 gold's not too much to drop down in the pocket. It's helping them out immensely over here for the Fishies.
On control wards, you place a ward and then it might immediately get cleared by a control ward, so that might still count towards your number, but not for the overall vision war that's occurring. Right now, the Fire Giant pit is pretty firmly secured vision-wise by the Fishies. A couple control wards for the Tiburones on either side, on the other end, or on their own end of the map, but they won't know if the Fishies from the other side are attempting to sneak away and object over there on that side of the map. The Pyromancer is going to spawn here shortly, so you imagine the Fishies will be at least somewhat concerned about that. Gore, in the last fight, was really the big first flourish that we saw this Tiamat have. There's a bit of a quiet early game from Nehu. Lots of pressure put on Nehu in the mid lane.
Ooh, good
on this
wall.
ever so important pick. Great wall from Oceans, but good sidesteps there from Gaija. We're starting to reach the point now in this build. Plenty of bursts. Soul Gem, Rod of Tahuti, Divine Ruin. This Tiamat, you thought you kept in check early on, and if these fights keep going this way, things could get dangerous.
And I think it's highlighting kind of what I expected. Based on what Aquarius did, I didn't know if it was kind of the solo lane play style or what it was going to be. But Tiamat seems to be stacking up those assists a little bit more than the kills, right? And I actually kind of like that, right? A mage that, admittedly, she can definitely get some kills on her own. I think this is someone I enjoy seeing as kind of this setup, especially when you have 2 assassins on your team. You really want them to be kind of the highlight and finding everything. I think Nehu is going to be able to do whatever he wants, but this is really good from Fishies to kind of recognize what their playstyle should be.
That's a good blink from Cope there. Ranjaru had channeled the ultimate, used the ultimate, and then Ranjaru crashed down at where Cope previously was. Maybe saves the life of the Tiburones jungler at a pivotal point now. The Oni Fury looked at by the Fishies. Blink forward from Kiermi. Oh, and the immediate follow-up on the Thunder Crash. Piercing Moonlight, bat out of hell. That combines for a kill onto the mid laner. And now the Hunter. Look at this. Backliners left to die by the Tiburones. The Fishies all collapse on mid and Hunter, and they'll turn back towards the Fury.
That's actually, so when Aggro does his podcast, it's called the Backliners, but when they've had a bad week,
right.
it is the Backliners left to die, right? They usually leave that last part off, but I feel like mentally, if they're not in the right headspace, that's exactly what it is. I think also, by the way, just going to plug it tonight, 8 p.m. probably, just about him and Barrett chatting around. That should be fun to listen to after the first week of the SBL, but that is beside the point. Aggro, I'll take my paycheck after this game. Either way, I think this is good for the Fishies because, again, first off, massively, they get another Fury. All of those minion waves, the Oni minion waves, are going to give them a really good amount of push on their side. But they're in a 3v5 for a Fire Giant fight. Like, this should be pretty easy unless he can do some real trickery.
Oh, Heat's got it. Don't worry. Heat's got it from over the wall for sure. What? Somebody actually got it. I don't know if it was Heat, but somebody got it. Tiburones stealing it. It was Heat. Yeah, baby. Heat steals it from over the wall. Fishies thought they had it for sure, but Heat gets it done. I told you he's got it. I completely memeing because in the previous game I said the same thing, and whoever I said was going to steal it immediately died. So I was just rolling the dice, and Heed steals away the FG. Gore, how pivotal is it really, though? It's his 4K gold differential.
Hey.
Blugan dies with it, but you have delayed the game.
Oh, yeah, rinse, repeat, we're even. I mean, there's technically, like, the biggest advantage here is that one tower more that they have on the side of the Fishies. If that's still standing and you make a rush play for the Titan, there's a little bit of extra health he has. But as far as gold, I don't care about it. Yes, maybe you have half an item maybe even fully completed more than what the Tiburones have, but with that Fire Giant buff, especially because it goes on to Heat and Cope, of all people, it'd be nice if GuyJ was able to swing in there and respawn just in time with it, but timing doesn't always come that way. Stripping it away from the Fishies puts them right back into a good fight, but GuyJ, if he dies here, is going to be able to lose that.
GuyJ didn't die, but Piercing Moonlight will close that gap, and Chronic will pick up a pretty easy kill now for himself. Ocean's locking off another couple members of the Tiburone. Spreen has to use the Taiko drums defensively, but it's a bat out of hell to further re-engage on this fight. A wall from Ocean slows down the retreat from the Tiburones, and Blugan will have to use his ultimate, and look at the onslaught from the Fishies here. Nehu adds the 4th kill of the game for this Tiamat. And unfortunately, the FG buff's not going to win you this fight. It's a 3 for none. And the Fishies make the Tiburones pay for stepping up.
So I'm going to roll it back a little bit. It should have been even. It should have been considered an even game, and it should have absolutely been an even playing field. I did not factor in the Tiburones choosing to just roam freely, not as a team, and not really focusing for the team fight. Fishies, I mean, yeah, I was going to say, Fishies just play that the way they've been playing the rest of the game, right? Together as a unit and very well. I think that's just a weird shot call from the Tiburones. Really wanting that tier 1 tower over there and left to try and equal the playing field. They lose a tier 2 and 3 people in the process. Definitely not a worthwhile trade for them. Even with that Fire Giant steal, all they did was kind of stem you the bleeding at this point.
Yep.
Not necessarily stop the wound from, even becoming infected if things continue the way they are. Tiburones need a pretty another big swing in their favor to make this one go their way. I think they had their opportunity just a second ago and kind of threw it straight onto the ground, did not want it to happen that way. So now they have to start making that shift. What do you do next to get to the spot you were in 2 minutes ago?
You need to steal 2 more Fire Giants at this rate.
Another Fire Giant.
I'm retiring when I'm on top. I'm never saying he's got it again because I'm 1 for 1. I guess I'm 1 for 2 because I tried it again. Or I tried it previously in game number 1. If you're just now tuning in, don't worry. SPL will be starting after the thrilling conclusion of the Tiburones versus the Fishies here. Game number 3, 26 minutes in. Fishies have driven it from the early game. Small pushback from the Tiburones after a Fire Giant steal away from Heed. That buff lasts for another minute or so, and then the FG on the other end is likely, Gore, the next time we'll start to see a big bout of fighting. But it's just so it's so interesting to me how the Tiburones game plan has kind of changed from game 1. It's like they've forgotten how to team fight in their own way, I guess. This Fishies team has just seemed so much more comfortable in the shot calling. After a game 1 stomp, the Fishies have roared out of the gates and really controlled the team fights for really the last 2 games.
That's the thing. If you just clicked in and you didn't see game 1, Tiburones made the Fishies look like they didn't exist. Like they didn't look like a team in game number 1. Whereas this, I mean, again, like you said, it's just weird. Like, what's up with all of the team fights, the positioning, like who's choosing when to fight, where to fight, and all moments like that. Now you can see, I think the bigger issue they're going to have to face is Tiamat minions helping run down there on left lane. There's a big stack of minions that's about to start running it down, and that Phoenix is already exposed. You need someone to defend over there, but you also need to be present for this Fire Giant. I don't know if he has the magic in him for a second time, maybe a third time technically.
Look at him go!
As we've seen this set stealing as much as he can. They're running it down, and someone's got to start looking over there towards left, but everyone who's backed is running right back over to the right-hand side of the jungle. I think that Phoenix might start taking a couple hits. There, finally, Cope is going to take the hit and make his way over.
Kind of feels like free fire minions, and Cope is the one who has to go over, deal with the Tiamat minions. That means the Fishies have an opening on the right to knock down the Tier 2 tower. Only one tower remaining in the game, and that's the Tier 2 in mid. Wouldn't you guess it, a couple Tiamat minions working down the mid lane now as well. The constant pressure from this pick is kind of that intangible, right? I mean, you talk so much about the damage, the oppressiveness of the kit. Obviously such a strong character. And then you can also help your team split push without having to be there. It's global pressure without having to physically be there on that side of the map. Fire Giant now comes out 1 minute shy of it being enhanced. Tiburones are going to be able to at least contest or show some face if they want to. At the moment, I don't know if they want to. They were able to steal away the last one by some miracle. Let's see if they have a little more magic in the back pocket. Instead, the Tiburones want to fight. It's the piercing moonlight used by Chronic, but it doesn't connect onto the back line. Instead, Kirmi now bat out of hell. Low health bar on the Fishies jungler, and Oceans opens up the killing here. Now the rest of the Tiburones dive in, and it's Spree Cope combining for the damage. Great fight for the Tiburones. Nehu rampaging through this game could get worse, but Spreen just misses the last bit of damage. Kirmi somehow survives. No bat out of hell there. No more ultimates left. Good old-fashioned damage gore is what's going to get this done.
I don't know, though. They're not done just yet. You do get rid of a couple more members, but you're so low, and there's a Tiamat chasing you. There's the Aegis to try and stay alive, but this is not the end for Nehu. I think Nehu wants to keep going, but you gotta choose your target. Where do you go?
Oh,
and who do you look for? He gets the ball!
Oh, Nehu gets the quad for the deicide. Ban Tiamat, please. But Gore, don't worry. What was first pick? Set is what Tiburones got? They didn't ban Tiamat and they got Set? Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that's the way that one went. Nehu got a quad for the deicide, 8-3 and 4 on the Tiamat. Chronic top of the damage charts at 20,000, but Nehu is absolutely rampaging through this game, whether it's the freaking minions running down the lanes or all the damage that he's doing in these fights. Nehu is starting to take game number 3 over.
It was a fun joke that the desk made going into this when they lock in Set and then the opposition locks in Tsukuyomi Tiamat, and they said, yep, we can call it right here. Fishies have a good draft. And admittedly, that's kind of been the way the game's been going. Look where the kills are. 8-3 and 11, 6-2 and 16. I think those two have been the pretty big problem versus the 4-4 and 5 Set over there on the other side. Definitely something maybe should not have been glanced over. About a 9,000 gold lead at this point too, Dave. Look at the wards, finally. I don't have to fuss about anything. They've all got them. But there is always this threat. These minions, look, for something that is so dire as the split push these things can give, they look so ridiculous. They're so trolly. They are so goofy, but they will absolutely take this Phoenix if no one from Tiburones is going to go over there and try to stop it. So this is going to be solid. Look how many there are. They are dominating the left lane.
I mean, it's amazing we have to talk about it. I didn't think we were going to have to for a long, long time because I thought Tiamat was going to be forever banned.
Perma-banned for 3 months.
But we got Set, so don't worry about it. Tiburones on the back foot, on the verge of losing their first set here in the SCC. This fight could decide it all. Oceans uses his ultimate to keep himself in the fight a little bit longer. Now Gaijay and Spreen attempting to keep the backliners alive a little bit longer. It's about out of hell for Kirmi. The fight on the backside not going the Fishies' way. And it's Nehu who goes down first. It's a perfect first pick here for the Tiburones, and now Oceans is dead as well. How are the Tiburones winning this fight? Oh, it's only Kirmi and Chronic left in the fray. It's going to be another deicide, and this time the Tiburones decimate the Fishies.
And there's their miracle play, Dave. That's what I was looking at. Look, you steal one Fire Giant and you throw it away like it's just yesterday's leftovers. Now they're the ones that are going to be able to drive this. They don't have a lot of
Oh my
health
God.
on their side, and those minions are going to force them to at least lose a Phoenix. But look, they've got 30+ seconds. They can just run it down.
And it's some poetic justice, right? That we're hating on the set instead of the Tiamat, and now it's Heat who gets a double kill in the last fight of the game. Look, set's good too. Don't get me wrong, absurd.
He hurt
It's an
us.
18-26 game, and the Tiburones survive on a miracle endgame fight. The entire last, you have to laugh at
That was-
ourselves
dude.
at some point, right? I mean, we're
That was
just
fun.
harshing on the draft strategy. We're talking about how there's no world where you leave a set and leave the Tiamat up. That's the first loss so far here for the Tiamat. Whether or not it should have lost, TBD, but the Tiburones, fantastic team fight to win the game and then end the game. This one comes to a close in 3. Tiburones on top. Back to the desk, though, to break it down.
Thank you, Dave and Gore. That's right. The Tiburones keep their undefeated record. They somehow pull out a victory over the Fishies in this one. Impressive stuff from them, including that incredible dive at the very end in order to take care of that Tiamat, who did look pretty good in this one, Mifflin. A quadra kill in pocket for Nehu, but ultimately not enough in order to take down the now still undefeated Tiburones.
The Sharks, man, they've got strong mentals, because my mental shattered, as the casters already highlighted after that first 2 pick. I mean, Tsukiyomi Tiamat up top, pretty strong, but Tiburones, they keep their minds in it the entire time. They didn't lose focus, and I'm glad the Clips are of Cope right now. This guy was constantly trying his best to at least create space and make sure that his Tiamat wasn't able to run amok. Wasn't quite successful for it for the first 20 or so minutes, but only one team fight 30 minutes in is all it takes to win a game.
Well, this is the play that is on my mind. Heed stealing away the Fire Giant, pre-pops the ultimate just in case he wants to go in, never decides to, just uses the skewer over the wall. Remember the set in the last game, it was Kirmi who stole away a Gold Fury with a skewer. Now Heed repaid the favor. I think that the Tiburones get the better end of that deal, if I'm being honest with you. An impressive victory, a gutsy victory for the Tiburones. Let's put it that way. Not all of your games are going to look as easy as Game 1 did. Certainly not the case here in Game number 3, but despite some ugly score lines for them, they come out on top.
They sure do, man. And the Fishies, despite having not the most impressive record so far in the SCC, they really brought the battle to them this time, didn't they? The Sharks did not come away unscathed. Third game, comeback victory. That's tough, man. Both these teams, absolute competitors in the league.
Very, very close. As you see, North America just close in general. Every single matchup in NA went 2-1 in one direction or the other this week, whereas in Europe, it was the opposite story. It was nothing but 2-0s over across the pond. Let's check in with our North American standings with both the Sturdy Artisans and the Tiburones sitting at 3-0. Winter Dogs, Average Joes, and Fishies all knotted up at 1-2. And then the Herculean Hoofs, yeah, that's Baskin's team, by the way, 0-3 so far to start the Spring Challenger Circuit. Very, very interesting region to watch. If you're tuning in for SPL and you're asking what you've just tuned in for, you're missing some really good smites. So make sure you're tuning in early Thursdays through Sundays, starting at 11 a.m. every single day. You can catch either North America or Europe in that region. And this is what you're going to see next week if you decide to do that. We're going to kick it off on Thursday with Pandemonium up against Clay Soldiers, followed up by Accounting Department and Just F6, and Snake Hunters versus Elysium will be on Saturday. Then on Thursday, Tiburones will put up their undefeated record up against the Average Joes, and the Fishies will have another shot at taking down an undefeated team in the Sturdy Artisans on Sunday at 11 a.m. So make sure you're tuning in for that SCC action. But we know what you're here for. The SPL coming right around the corner. The Jade Dragons up against the Camelot Kings are going to be the first matchup. Plus, later on today, you'll get your very first look at what the Valhalla Valkyries are going to look like here in Season 8. Miff, first week of the SPL has been great so far. I expect today to be much more of the same.
Dude, I'm so pumped, in particular for that Valkyries matchup coming up against the Solar Scarabs. I think it's going to be a really good heat check for the Scarabs, who didn't look too good yesterday, but now, having got one SPL set under their belt, they can readjust their strategy, and I think that they should come into this set as the favorites, considering the Valkyries ping situation, having a couple players across the pond, some of them in Serbia as well. Could be a pretty good opportunity for the Scarabs to find a dub.
Well, we'll be covering all that and more in the pregame for that matchup. But first, we've got the Dragons up against the Kings, so don't go anywhere. Sit tight. We'll be right back with the SPL.